We're going to go ahead and call ourselves to order, and would ask all of you guys, if you don't mind standing. We're going to give the invocation, then we'll do both pledges. And if you'll welcome Brian Van Meter coming up to lead us in the prayer. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Would you please bow your heads? Father God, we come to you with glad hearts today, Lord. We come to you just so blessed and so humbled by the magnificence of your blessings, God. Lord, I thank you for this city. I thank you for the opportunities that it provides us to do good work. God, I ask that you be with us today and give us wisdom and help us to lead in a way that suits your kingdom, God. Father, we remember the men and women that gave their lives tomorrow for the anniversary of the attacks on America. We ask that you continue to watch over their families and wrap them in your arms and give them peace. Father, we love you so much. We ask that you just live in us and help us to serve your kingdom in all we do. It's in your Son's mighty name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, brother. Appreciate you. If you guys will join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And the Texas flag as well. Honor the Texas flag.
I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Please be seated. Thank you guys for doing that with us. All right, we get to do a couple proclamations. So I think council's going to come down there. We are going to do a proclamation here to acknowledge and celebrate National Preparedness Month. So we have OEM, Max Dunlap, and everyone here. And then we're also going to do National IT Professionals Day. Our IT professional is Tom Sherlin, so he will get to read that one for us. So we're going to join you guys right down here.
Scary thought. You're better than the mayor.
I just turned mine on and off.
There's Max. There he is. All right. Whereas National Preparedness Month serves as a reminder that we all must take action and prepare now and throughout the year for the types of emergencies that could affect us where we live, work, and visit. And whereas emergency preparedness is a responsibility of every citizen to ensure that individuals, families, and our community are prepared for emergencies. And whereas investing in the preparedness of ourselves, our families, and our businesses, we can reduce the number of casualties and the economic devastation in our community and end our nation. And whereas all citizens of Amarillo are encouraged to participate in the community preparedness and resilience engagement to learn more about emergency preparedness and opportunities to volunteer and develop skills from our community's emergency response, volunteer, and faith-based agencies. Now, therefore, we, Mayor and City Council members of the City of Amarillo, Texas, do hereby proclaim the month of September 2024 as National Preparedness Month. There we go. Appreciate you. So I'll pass it off over to pass it over to Max Dunlap. So.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for this. This does mean a lot. So this is a national campaign that did start after 9/11. We do want to increase the preparedness and the individual's awareness of this month, but I do want to highlight that preparedness is a personal matter and subjective matter to most, but what a lot of people don't realize that there's an entire team of folks standing behind me that this is their one and only job. We do this every day, 365 days a year, and this team of 7 behind me is an amazing, and I get the distinct pleasure of leading that team every day, and I'm greatly and eternally thankful for y'all, Mayor and Council, and this team behind me. Thank you all.
Everybody crush Casey.
Now, you know they're really in trouble when they say I'm the IT guy, because I'm about as far from it as anything. Y'all come on up here. The City of Amarillo City Council proclamation. Whereas National IT Professional Day was created in 2015 and is celebrated the third Tuesday of September each year. And whereas it is acknowledged and appreciation of the technical experts, including network engineers, system administrators, database administrators, business systems analysis, GSI analysis, and service desk technicians who ensure our network, application, tools, technology, and information are kept secure, ensuring technical processes, systems, and devices operate smoothly, and whereas the City of Amarillo recognizes the importance and benefits of IT professionals in critical roles, enriching the lives of our citizens and making Amarillo a desirable place to live, work, play, and visit. Whereas the City of Amarillo supports the skilled work of the IT professionals to strengthen communication and resilience in the community, connect people with technology and each other, and provide and promote opportunities for healthy living, equity, and sustainability. Now, therefore, we, Mayor and City Council of the City of Amarillo, Texas, do hereby proclaim September 17, 2024 as National IT Professional Day.
Mayor, Council, this is truly an honor. We have an incredible team that does all the support for the city here, and we're very proud to serve our citizens. Thank you.
We appreciate that. How much closer do we want to get?
Yeah. Oh.
Dude, I broke my pen. Oh, look at that.
Oh.
Because you're too strong. Screw it on too hard.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you guys for doing that with us. Appreciate everyone, and all the professionals we get to work with. So we're done with 5B. We'll go to announcements. I would ask Mr. City Manager, you have any announcements here today from staff?
Yes, sir.
Okay. No other announcements that we know of. Ms. City Secretary, I'm going to hand it over to you for public comment. We'll move into item number 7.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for participating in today's City Council. There we go. Thank you for participating in today's City Council meeting. Your input and your opinions are important to us, and we're glad that you're here to share them today. At each posted meeting, we invite our fellow community members to address City Council regarding posted agenda items or topics related to city policy. Every speaker today will have 3 minutes to address Council. At the end of 2.5 minutes, a warning beep will sound to alert you that you have 30 seconds left to wrap up your thoughts. We do have some public hearings today, so if you're here to speak on a public hearing, we would ask that you do so either during public comment or during the public hearing, but not both, in order to help us keep accurate minutes of today's meeting. It's your decision at which time you would like to speak. Remember, if you speak of something not on the agenda today, the Texas Open Meetings Act limits how council can interact with you on that item. They can recite a statement of fact or statement of policy. They can refer your item to a future agenda, or they can refer you to staff to discuss your topic. When you come to the microphone today, please state your name and whether or not you live in Amarillo city limits, and then you may begin addressing council. We're going to start today with Sherry Ollinger Scott. And if Miss Scott is not here, then Courtney Brown. On deck after Miss Brown will be Noah Dawson. And I have some papers for y'all.
Thank you.
Afternoon.
Thank you.
All right. Good afternoon, Councilman. I'm Courtney Brown, and I'm a resident of Amarillo and a local business owner. I'm here today on behalf of the Amarillo Reproductive Freedom Alliance concerning Prop A ballot language. We believe that it is imperative for citizens to understand exactly what the ordinance does and how it goes further than current state law. The declarations and measures do not inform the voters of their vulnerability to lawsuits should they be seen in violation of the ordinance. We find it important to inform voters that this ordinance will follow Amarillo citizens regardless of where the abortion takes place. As seen in possible ballot language provided at previous council meetings, it might be unclear to voters who think this ordinance only applies to abortions in Amarillo, which we all know abortion services have been unavailable for decades within city limits. After conferring with lawyers, we suggest the following. The Code of Ordinances of the City of Amarillo, Texas shall be amended to adopt an initiated ordinance submitted by the Amarillo Sanctuary City for the Unborn Citizen Initiative Petition Initiating Committee, declaring the City of Amarillo a sanctuary city for the unborn, providing a private right of action, allowing Amarillo residents to bring lawsuits for no less than $10,000 for alleged violations of the ordinance, prohibiting abortions on City of Amarillo residents regardless of where the procedure occurs as its legality in that jurisdiction, prohibiting transit through Amarillo for the purpose of seeking abortion care out of state, referred to as abortion trafficking of an unborn child, prohibiting the use of abortion-inducing drugs within the City of Amarillo, prohibiting any organization found guilty of violating federal laws restricting the mailing of obscene or crime-inciting matters under 18 U.S.C. Sections 1461 or 1462 by facilitating abortions from operating or doing business in the City of Amarillo, prohibiting the transportation or disposal of the remains of a terminated pregnancy within the City of Amarillo, providing the affirmative defenses, providing for severability, and providing an effective date. We recognize that it is no easy feat turning 18 pages of confusing and overreaching laws into simple ballot language. This council had a year to learn and digest the egregious overreaching aspects of this ordinance before voting it down 4-1. We ask that this council to provide clear language to the citizens who will stand 5 minutes in a voting booth deciding whether or not to give up their rights to bodily autonomy, privacy, speech, and interstate travel. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Next is Noah Dawson.
Noah Dawson, y'all still haven't gotten rid of me yet. I want to talk a little bit about item 9B, the minutes for the executive session meeting held a couple weeks ago. Specifically, I want to ask a few questions. This first question, I'm pretty sure I already know the answer to, but was Kevin Carter in attendance at that meeting? And if the answer is yes, first of all, what portions of the meeting was he there for? Specifically, I want to know time-wise, the part before the regular meeting or the part after the regular meeting. And in addition, which agenda items was he there for? The part for the consultation with the attorney or with the part regarding the Range Foundation, or was he there for both? And finally, I want to know if he was there, why is that not reflected in the draft minutes, meeting minutes? Additionally, one other one, it's a lot less major of an issue, but I've heard that George Hyde has been involved with the discussions regarding the situation, and so I'm curious as to whether or not he was in attendance at that meeting, either in person or virtually, and if so, why wasn't he listed on the minutes for the meeting? Thank you.
Afternoon, Mr. Dawson. As a statement of fact, and you can correct me if you need to, Brian, .087 was the portion of the meeting that was listed second, but we took it up in exec first. And so that's the portion of the meeting where we did have the director in the meeting, Mr. Carter, for the specific purpose of an ongoing incentive package and project. In the second part of the meeting, .071, we met with our attorney, and only our attorney and Mr. Path and ourselves were in that meeting. Hope that helps to clear that up.
But I would really like to see that reflected in the minutes of the meeting.
We'll see if staff can get that to you so that you can look that over and make sure it's correct.
It's not in the draft minutes online.
Okay. Appreciate you, Mr. Dawson.
Mayor, that concludes everyone that signed up for today.
Okay. Do I have anyone else here today that would like to speak or give public comment? Okay, we appreciate those that came. We'll keep our meeting moving forward here and move on to our discussion items. Item 8A, do I have any review or any questions, anything that council needs before we move forward? Item 8B, we have President Mr. Walter Windler coming up here to give us an update on WT and how we're working well together as a city and a stakeholder down the hill. Afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, and thank you very much for the opportunity to just say a few words. I appreciate. I try to do this every year, get before the council, and just talk a little bit about what we're doing at West Texas A&M University, because we are joined to the city of Amarillo at the hip. You're very important to us, and we appreciate it very much. Our goal continues to be at West Texas A&M University to serve the Texas Panhandle first. A lot of universities are looking at serving the world and serving the nation and serving the state. We want to do those things, but we believe the best avenue to service in all of those dimensions is to serve locally first. And we want to do that in a way that upholds and substantiates the values of the Texas Panhandle and the city of Amarillo, and we are thankful to be able to continue to do that. We look forward to it. A couple of things I want to mention. I know you all know that the Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Center, there's a new one under construction on the A&M on the West Texas A&M campus, and I think that's going to free up some property in a very important location here in the city of Amarillo, and I believe its location, its co-location with other branches of the Texas A&M University system that serve the whole panhandle and, of course, serve Amarillo is most appropriate, connected with the things we do at West Texas A&M University. You know, as our region becomes more of a food hub, range and other things, and a center for beef production, our ag school and the extensions of the ag school through the Texas A&M University system are essentially, are very essential, I think, to continued economic development in the Texas Panhandle. We're proud for that relationship, and we're thankful for what's going on right now down on the campus. We have another project that I think will hopefully come to fruition. We have received a grant of $1.5 million to study the future of the Panhandle Plains Historical Museum, which has been located on the campus at West Texas A&M University for 100 years, for a century, a long time. And the bottom line is the museum, the building itself is falling apart. It's been added, there's actually 5 buildings that have been added onto, one after the other. And so much of it now is not consistent with current codes and not reflective of a contemporary museum facility. And we believe it's critically important that we do this. We have in that museum, and the Panhandle owns, in a sense, the best collection of historical artifacts in the state of Texas. There's no question about it. There's nearly 3 million artifacts there, and there's no museum in the state that has access to those artifacts. Yet the building itself is literally falling down around the artifacts. We've got all kinds of issues with it, heating, ventilating, air conditioning issues, plumbing issues, lighting issues, humidity issues, all of these things that are critical in museum environments to hold on to and protect collections of nearly sacred objects that record, in my mind, the value or the value systems of the people of the Texas Panhandle. And these value systems, I think, are coveted by places around the world, including other parts of Texas. The fact is that what we are here is, in my mind, I'll say, the genuine Texas article. That's what we have here in the Texas Panhandle. And we best never forget that because it is disappearing. And it's not just Texas. I mean, if you talk to somebody in Tokyo and they want to go to Texas, I don't know if they're interested in going to Houston or Dallas. And if there's any natives, I apologize. But the fact of the matter is they want to go to Amarillo. They want to see what Texas is, and this is the place to see it. And that museum and the things that are held in it become incredibly valuable to holding on to our state's past and our state's history and the entrepreneurial spirit that allows us to lead in the production of food, fuel, and fiber. And we're national leaders in every one of those areas. And in some areas, absolutely the national leader. And we believe that's important. And that museum catalogs all that. So we're making an effort to launch an initiative. We have some good help with this, a significant legislative issue this session with the Texas Historical Commission to seek funding to redo the entire museum. And I think it's an ambitious project. There's no question in my mind, but it's essential to our future and will, I think, bring great positive attention to the whole of the Texas Panhandle, but especially to Amarillo and Canyon, which I consider to be connected. I mean, we're just together. And I think this is very important. Lastly, as an update, I want to mention the importance of some arrangements that have been made recently regarding behavioral health care here in the city of Amarillo in service to the whole of the Texas Panhandle. Every sheriff in the top 26 counties of Texas will applaud the new state, and I'll call it mental hospital. There's different terms used by different folks, but we all know what we mean. Mental hospital here on Amarillo Boulevard, on the old site of the Texas Veterinary Medical Diagnostic Lab. This was a complex project because in order for the state, and I did not realize this myself, to transfer property from one state agency, which West Texas A&M University, through the Texas A&M University system is, we're a state agency, to another state agency, HHS, there has to be an exchange of equal value. So I was charged by Chancellor Sharp to find a way to generate a $1.35 million commitment that could be turned over to the Texas A&M University system, so the transfer of this land on Amarillo Boulevard could be made. While there are other sites in Amarillo, I think that could work for HHS. This is the one they wanted. They believed this was the best site available in the city because of its co-location with other health care services and so on and so forth. So we worked hard at that, and we had a lot of help with that. This is a major effort that's been a long time in the making. There are a lot of people, and some of our legislative leaders at the state level, Representative Ford Price, Representative John Smithy, Senator Kevin Sparks, these folks, Ken King, Representative Ken King, have all worked diligently to get this to happen. And that's good. But what made it better, I think, is the kind of vertical integration, because Mayor Stanley and the city was very helpful in this process. The Amarillo Economic Development Corporation was very helpful. Remember, we needed to raise $1.35 million. Both counties helped out. HHS was committed. The mayor knows they've been up here for meetings. They've been very attentive to what we're trying to do, and they wanted to help us. And I actually think the relationship between the university, the hospital, and the surrounding communities, the municipality of Amarillo and others, working together, both counties, Potter and Randall, working together, will create a kind of a prototype relationship for how a state hospital like this can be integrated into the local fabric and the provision of needs, response to needs and care. AEDC in the city committed to a commitment of $600,000 over time to get all this to work. We had to have that on paper. And in addition, 4 foundations, the Bivens Foundation, the Harrington Foundation, High Plains Christian Ministry, and the Amarillo Area Foundation, have already written us checks to equal $750,000. And with that money, we're utilizing those funds to buy the bus station. The last bus rolled out of there on Friday afternoon. I was down there just before it left, kind of walking through the facilities yet again. And I think within a week, we're going to close this deal now. And that property will be transferred to Texas A&M, the Texas A&M University system in West Texas. And this, by the way, was, and I'm not just saying this because I'm here, but this was Mayor Stanley's idea. My idea, I'm almost embarrassed to say it, but my original idea was that we could use that bus station, glass in the ends, and do some modifications on the inside, and use it for a branch of the Panhandle Plains Historical Museum downtown in Amarillo. Well, that's a nice idea, but Mayor Stanley said, we need something that relates to workforce development. We need something that produces economic development for the city of Amarillo and the surrounding region. And we got this idea. I think Mayor Stanley had it first, but some kind of a training facility for mental health care. And coupled with the nursing, Joan Laura Street School of Nursing right there in the Amarillo Center, we're going to, these 2 facilities, this facility will become one facility with a bus station, and we are going to provide family nurse practitioner training, Master of Science nursing training, BSN, and some certificate programs for technical staff who work in mental health hospitals. And my hope is, working with HHS and the city and the university, all of us working together, can create a facility here that becomes a model for the state of Texas. And I actually believe we can do it because we have the community will. And I will tell you that the leadership of HHS told me more than once there's a level of commitment here that was evidenced in these meetings that we've had. And I know you all had a meeting at the time the last one had to be scheduled. We had to work with all these different people and the chancellor and the state reps and so on and so forth to get everything done. But there were 200 people at that meeting, and he was taken with the kind of community involvement, and he really appreciated it. So, and in addition, when the building gets turned over to us, we already, Congressman Ronnie Jackson has already placed in the federal budget $4 million to help with the renovation, and we're going to find another probably $10 or $12 million to complete that renovation. And that will take, in a sense, a sow's ear, which that bus station was, and it'll make a silk purse out of it, I believe. That's going to really benefit the city of Amarillo. And I'm thankful for the leadership of the city, the counties, the foundations. Everybody worked together. Everybody had their hands in this. And that was, as much as anything, Mayor Stanley's leadership. And I'm thankful for it. And proud to be a partner with the city of Amarillo. And proud to be hopefully a productive and committed citizen. And I'm speaking for WT of the Texas Panhandle.
Well, President Windler, we appreciate you being here for that update. It started with Judge Tanner, I think, along with, a couple of our representatives down at the state. And it took that buy-in at the state for us to get something rolling up here. But then what Mr. Windler, President Windler's not telling you is the whole thing that none of us could really get our hands on is we're going to build a hospital up here. And staff looked for months for locations all over. You guys had the best location for the mental health hospital, but we're building that hospital and there's 300, 400 jobs that you can't place. We don't have the workforce here. And so I believe it was Lori Rice Spearman that was also working hand in hand with you guys. So a good example of synergy and a collaborative spirit of just handing the ball back and forth and whatever it takes to get the work done. And so Walter's been the guy driving the ship here, and he has that piece of curriculum and workforce development, that educational piece with the university system of A&M behind him. And so we really appreciate your leadership on it. And honestly, like, we might end up with a nice new building up here with no one working in it if we don't have people like President Windler, both our judges, Judge Dyer as well as Tanner, our state representatives, our state senator, everybody pulling on this. And so I just knew that I couldn't talk this council into a museum. That was going to cost a little money. But I knew that if we were able to direct something through our EDC, that would be something, workforce development, that would qualify and that we'd see the outcomes in. And then we all appreciate the need that we have in our community for mental health and mental health care. The vast desert that we have in not having those professionals at hand, and then the increasing need that we have in the society we live in, where the world turns faster and faster and stress is a real thing, and we need to be able to help those people if we want to live in a nice community where we truly love each other. And so you're a great foundational partner. We appreciate all the leadership and then also the updates on everything. So, Dr. Windler, thank you for being here. We appreciate you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we can applaud for that. So. Okay. Item 8B, item 8C, legislative agenda. We have Mr. Freeman coming up here to walk us through that one.
Yes, sir. This is a great segue from Dr. Windler's discussion. We're here today to talk about the 2025 legislative agenda. This will be the first time having this discussion with our current city council, so I wanted to touch a little bit about the purpose and some of the reasons why we would have something like this in place. First being advocating for local priorities. Having an agenda clearly communicates our priorities and interest. Having this in place ensures the city's unique challenges, needs, and opportunities are understood and represented at the state and federal level. encourages proactive engagement. By having this established, we can engage with those lawmakers that are working on influencing policies before they're enacted, so they know what the city's interest is in these local policies that then can be reflected in the bills that they are establishing. The potential for securing funding and resources will allow us to look for funding and resources at higher levels of government, which you're all aware of, that we go after state and federal grants on a regular basis. This allows us to communicate up front what our needs and challenges are so that they know that we've got council and citizen buy-in for those grants. It also builds relationships with lawmakers to foster better relationships with state and federal representatives, encouraging an open dialogue and positions the city as a reliable partner that they can turn to when it comes to crafting some of that legislation. A good example of that was the COLA changes with TMRS and be able to partner with our local police association to reflect the language that would work for cities to opt back in for those COLAs. And then lastly, coordinating efforts with other jurisdictions, like West Texas A&M with the mental health hospital, with our counties. It allows us to align our efforts with other taxing entities, other partners, so that we can be on the same page on many of those priorities and work together to accomplish those goals. It's also helpful with our partners at the Chamber of Commerce. They go to Panhandle Days each time the state's in session. It gives them what the city's expectations are, and that really helps lead their efforts of the conversations with those officials and their staff. So in summary, ensures that the city's voice is heard, strengthens its ability to influence decisions, and enhances our ability to secure funding and resources, all of which benefit the city of Amarillo and its citizens. So as far as our general approach that you see on the dais, you do have a copy of the most recently approved that was for the 2022-2023 calendar year. We have some kind of overarching statements of what we'll support or what we're opposing. Those are shown on the screen as far as trying to enhance our ability to solve problems, improve quality of life, initiatives that will enhance educational, cultural, and infrastructure resources for the region, but also that we'd oppose anything that increases our costs, reduces our authority, or burdens the taxpayers with unfunded mandates through bills that are approved at the state level in particular. Another piece that is included that we would update bringing this forward is the current council pillars, so they know what our strategic priorities are adopted by City Council. This is a list of the current position statements. As you go through the document, there's a paragraph or multiple sentences that kind of outline what we're in favor of and why, as well as giving just a little bit more information. They're not fully detailed because these are broad topics, but it does give our representatives an idea of where the council stands on a particular issue, and then it just opens up that dialogue to continue to work on some of those issues. Some of these that we would bring back have already been accomplished. You'll see the mental health hospital and funding for one here in Amarillo was included in there as a priority, so that's one we can check off the list. Another example is economic development. Chapter 313 expired and it was renewed in a new policy, a new bill for schools to fund economic development. So that's another one that's no longer necessary. But you'll still see some that they are set to expire at certain time periods. So we want to make sure that we continue to have it on our radar and the state's radar, that those are tools that the council and our Economic Development Corporation utilize to incentivize jobs here locally and encourage that development. As far as federal, it's pretty similar, but more geared toward funding resources. So we would want to see some updates, maybe not naming specific bills, because a lot of these bills are already in place. That'll expire. Those will change as administrations change. So we may broaden that language a little bit, but really the goal is to lay out what our infrastructure priorities are, community development block grant funding, economic development, any of those tools that we might have an opportunity to seek federal funds to improve our position here in Amarillo to make sure they know what our priorities are. Lastly, so we would bring back a resolution for council to consider adopting a legislative agenda, but that doesn't necessarily mean you are locked in just with that agenda. We have one-off things come up. Once we get into the legislative session, we of course don't know what the bills are until they're filed. So there may be something that council sees or that's brought forward to council that you are asked to support. We can come forward with either one-off resolutions. We could revise the agenda if need be, just so you can go ahead and weigh in on those topics. Again, the example of that was the cost of living adjustment. That came after adoption of this agenda, so it came through a separate resolution. And then you as a council adopted the resolution to support Operation Lone Star. So that's another example of one that was not included in this agenda. So that is really the presentation on this topic. We're really here just to introduce it, get any general feedback. Some options we've discussed is that council could take the time to kind of review these, see if anything's missing, sticks out of, no, we don't want to support this anymore, we'd like to see something added, and then we'd come back at a future meeting as a potential consideration. Staff would also go through and update the council pillars, the ones that have been accomplished, maybe fine-tune some language, like I mentioned about not naming certain bills at the federal level, and just bring that to more current standards. So with that, I'm happy to hand it back for a discussion or answer any questions.
Yes, sir. So before we maybe jump into a few questions, I would like council to know my intention on this. I've found it to be helpful when you're engaging, say, with maybe Senator Sparks, if you can reference the fact that it's not just your legislative idea, it's not just one thing you're asking him to work on your behalf, it's something that you had the support of council, you had the support of your staff, and you can get pretty specific on this. And so this is your opportunity, council, to move the needle at the state ledge. And you have really good, hardworking individuals that truly represent your community here, and your House representatives as well as your senator. And so I would think that we would want to entertain any and all. And so one thing that I've been working on for a while, and I see Dr. Habersong out here in the audience, so he's a good reminder of like true informed consent, and something that we have drifted away from since 2020, 2021. And so that's a legislative work where myself, my constituents would like to see something at the state legislature that reminds us what our role is, what that Hippocratic Oath is, what those Nuremberg rules and regs, reminded us of, and everything that we've come through over the last 4 years. As another idea, some things just to get you guys thinking through it. I would love to have things that we can put on this agenda. I still take emails from sweet older ladies that ask me like where their blue skies went from stratospheric aerosol injections. And so, what we have a name for, what we understand is happening. What's the governing body that's regulating that? What's the testing? Are we monitoring soils? Are we monitoring water? We sit on one of the largest water rights reserves up here, and so we have a role in that of protecting our community and asking those good questions. And so these are things that we want to continue to put forward. And while we have those men and women that are working for us at the state, let's take an opportunity to put some things on the legislature. Women's health care, great topic. I know that that's something that, we're talking about here today. What can those heavy hitters do for us down at the state that we're trying to resource funds, interest, support on? So, council, my expectation would be a couple weeks from now to have feedback from you guys in a discussion item. 2 weeks after that, maybe have something that's up for a resolution. We would put forward a document that we would all resolve, and we would send this on, and then that gives you a great opportunity to engage with your representatives and your senator. So questions for Mr. Freeman or maybe for myself and what we're trying to accomplish here?
No, sir.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Have you heard, are there any particular items, hot button items that are coming up in the Texas legislative session that would affect us or something that's kind of at the top of the list of a topic that may come up?
Potentially, nothing's sticking out currently. They are still in committees kind of working through. Haven't really started filing the bills quite yet, but I know they're still talking heavily about annexation, ETJs. We still had the Death Star bill that's still sitting out there as far as kind of controlling what cities can adopt that preempts the state. So some of those topics, I also share with y'all TML's legislative update. They're tracking quite a bit of those similar topics. So you'll see some similarities between those. But by the end of the year, we'll start knowing some main topics.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Freeman, we appreciate you and staff and also just the organization that you guys have had in keeping track of everything, and we've made some good headway. So it's nice to see that some of those things are already checked off, and some of them are 70% there in that COLA for our retirees. So
A lot of them will just be ongoing. You probably will never remove them from this list kind of topics, but mixed in there are some of those others.
And I would like to just acknowledge that Senator Sparks' office, and I think it's his legislative exec over there, that had reached out to us and reminded us, hey, we're ready for that. So thank you to their office for engaging with us. Otherwise, we might have been so busy we missed the deadline. So appreciate you guys.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, council, for that. We are going to move on to item 8D. We have Miss Casey Stoughton coming here to discuss a women's health care clinic concept. And so, afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for the time. I'm very excited about this. I'll probably say the word excited multiple times, so I'm sorry if that word gets old. We are very excited. I have 2 slides with data demonstrating the need for women's health services. You can see from this slide that maternal mortality, which is defined as the death of a woman while pregnant or within 42 days from the end of pregnancy, but not from accidental or incidental causes, is much higher in the U.S. than any other high-income country. Maternal mortality is especially affects Black women in the U.S. Risk factors for maternal mortality include obesity or being overweight, chronic hypertension, which is high blood pressure, diabetes, and being low income. Preeclampsia, which is high blood pressure during pregnancy, has increased by 37% since 2017. Here in the Texas Panhandle, the need is great. There's a lot of inequities here in the Texas Panhandle with regard to maternal health. Access to maternity care and women's health services. You can see we have a maternal health desert situation here in the Panhandle. Potter County, Randall County, Ochiltree, and Hartley counties are 4 of the 26 counties in the Panhandle with full access to maternal and OB services. Dallam, Moore, and Hutchinson County have low access, and the rest of the counties in the Texas Panhandle have no access to maternal or obstetric care. Maternal mortality in Texas is higher than the national average. 90% of maternal deaths are deemed preventable, and 2/3 of deaths occur in the postpartum period. So you can see the need is great. As we're putting together the framework for the maternal health or women's health clinic, we looked into a lot of different frameworks and pieces of guidance, and the Health Services Resource Administration, or HRSA, has a set of preventative services that are a set of recommendations and preventative health services and screenings for women across the lifespan, and this is based on scientific evidence and clinical practice. And with the $1 million allocated for the Women's Health Clinic, Amarillo Public Health will be able to achieve these 12 preventative health services. So these are the services that we have set up as kind of the framework for the Women's Health Clinic. So we'll be able to provide well women visits, where we'll be able to do mammogram referrals, Pap testing, pregnancy testing, contraception, STI testing and treatment, and then a program that we're calling prenatal care, and I'll go into that on the next slide. But we're working very closely with community partners such as Texas Tech and Heal the City, who are both very excited about this opportunity and been very supportive. So prenatal care is in that program, what we'll be doing is pregnancy testing. Once a person is identified as pregnant, then we'll be able to provide prenatal vitamins, STI screen, drug screening, mental health screening. We'll have Medicaid navigators on site so that we can connect pregnant people to pregnancy Medicaid to secure a payer source. Our goal is to have linkage to social services where we'll be able to connect people to WIC, SNAP, TANF, Nurse-Family Partnership, community development to make sure that all of those social resources are met, and then referral to prenatal care. And so that referral will be a warm handoff into Texas Tech OB, and their team, we've been talking about different aspects of what that would look like, and part of that will be an on-site Texas Tech clinic, and they have a mobile ultrasound that will be available to our patients, which will be a huge asset. The staffing needs, we'll need 1 nurse practitioner or a physician's assistant, 2 registered nurses who are already on staff, 1 health educator planner, which will be that social worker, and 2 staff, 1 MA and 1 Medicaid navigator. And we'll repurpose 1 staff person for the second Medicaid navigator. And I'm happy to answer any questions or talk through any specific details that you would like to.
We may have a few just in kind of, this will be the second or third time I think that we've gotten to engage with you on it. So
Sure.
to get into a few of the details, and council, I'll let you guys jump in, but one thing that I didn't see listed was maybe sonograms. Are we going to have an ability to have sonograms there?
So that will be working with Texas Tech, and they'll have their portable ultrasound system. We want to make sure that that women are connected to a provider when we do that ultrasound, so that if an anomaly is determined, then they'll already be connected to care, so that can be addressed.
Okay. I love the prenatal part, and then some of the other care. Transportation, you may have listed, and I didn't see it. That's a big one in the way in trying to get to and from doctors' offices, getting to appointments. How much do you think is missed in our medical healthcare system just because availability wasn't there and the ability to get to the appointment? Or you didn't know where you were in the stage of pregnancy until you were heading to the hospital and had some sort of issue?
It's definitely a concern, and one that that all of our community partners talk about. And so we've been talking with Chris over at Transit, and so that will certainly be part of the solution. I didn't put it in because we'll be working with him on that. So I didn't put it in because it wouldn't be part of that $1 million.
If we were to have some sort of transportation, be it city provided or maybe volunteer and city provided, depending on what you could work, you may be able to get to the clinic downtown, kind of east side of town, and then as far as getting to the medical, offices that typically are over on North Coulter. That's something you guys would be looking into, vouchers, whatever that transportation would look like, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And we'll also be working with Texas Tech to provide some on-site services so that transportation may be, that need will be reduced a little bit as well.
Do you think that would be weekly?
I can't,
Hopefully.
I don't know how to,
Okay.
those details we're working,
Okay.
but I hope so.
Tell us a little bit about the resource gap that you may have. And so you have, let's pick on an easy one. Let's say just child care seats or car seats. And how often do you run out of some sort of resource and there's a waiting list or something there that this funding in this amount of money that our city could put into your department that would fill that gap? And then would we be reimbursed for that, so to speak, if you had a waiting list? What type of items do you have that are something that you hand out and you have a resource gap?
So we have a resource gap for car seats, like you mentioned, and also pack-and-plays. We work with the state of Texas for car seats, so we're part of the Safe Riders program, and that is a fairly stable source of resources. I would say probably every 4 to 6 months we have a waiting list,
Okay.
and we're able to fill that. And it also kind of depends on the type of car seat. So we go through infant seats faster than we do like booster seats.
So we're looking, this council is looking for ways to support your department that gets that kind of immediate need where you see that engagement right into that citizen or that issue, because I'm assuming a lot of your clients are, hey, I need this, and then, they're forced to go and figure it out somewhere else, or they go without it. And so we probably see some of those outcomes. Tell us about your current facility, and then remind everyone that you don't need a new building. So to do
We
this.
have a lovely new facility, and we won't need a new facility for this project. So our current facility has 24 exam rooms, and we've kind of spread out a little bit. The plan is to consolidate so that we definitely have space in our new facility for this project, and so we're excited about utilizing the space for this women's health clinic.
Council, you guys have any questions for Mrs. Stoughton on this idea and concept?
The only one I have is, how long would it take turnkey to get running once it's funded?
It'll take time to hire staff. So that's probably the longest. The longest delay is hiring staff. There'll be a little bit of equipment that we'll need to purchase, and then establishing contracts with partners.
Perfect. Thank you.
And I didn't see anything in here on like postnatal care. Would that be something y'all be referring out to Texas Tech? Okay.
It is. $1 million just goes fast.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And so it's definitely, prenatal care, postnatal care. Those things are our goals. We felt like these were these services were high priority, sure. and the others were things we could work into.
Gotcha. Okay. And always searching for grants, right? You guys do a great job of.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, whether it's car seats or whatever it is. Okay. Thank you.
Anything else?
So with the nurse practitioner and physician's assistant, they have to fall under a supervising physician. Who would that be?
So our medical director and health authority is Dr. Todd Bell, and then we'll also be appreciating the expertise of Teresa Baker, who is the chair at Texas Tech OB.
Okay. So this is kind of maybe even a higher level of medical care than we're providing now, because we don't have physician's assistants or nurse practitioners now.
We do.
Okay.
We have one physician assistant that works at Public Health right now.
Okay, and they fall under Dr. Bell. Okay, all right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So we had thrown around $1 million in our budget. What does your ask look like?
I've got it down to $1,037,000.
Okay. Real close.
Real close.
I know you're excited about that.
I am excited.
Okay. Council, I would sure like to see us support this in trying to improve those outcomes and come alongside this part of our community where we really do see a lack of agreement, if I could say it that way. This is something we can all agree on, right? And so let's put some resources with Casey and her team and try to help them. And so I think for right now, we probably are going to need some more as we get going. We would just encourage you to take what your team and what you envision and just continue to build it, but bring it back a little at a time. Let the community collaborate with you. Let us work with you. And let's end up with a really good product over there. And then we're glad to support.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Do you have anything else you want to add?
I don't. Just we certainly appreciate your support.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Ms. Casey, thank you. Are we doing pretty good, Council? We want to keep going? We want to take a recess, 4 o'clock.
Take a break real quick.
Take a break, and then we'll come back for item 8E. We may have a good discussion going on item 8E. You guys take 10 minutes. We'll be right back. Thank you. order or into session here. Item 8E is an update regarding the EDC Corp. In connection to the range. So we don't have anyone here to present this. Ideally, what we're just going to try to do is just try to be as open and upfront with some discussions that we've had and why we've had them with our council, with you guys present, just to kind of hear how we're walking this forward and what we're trying to do, what we're also trying not to do. So I'll take a minute to recap. We have an organization called The Range. It was originally noticed under the Amarillo Global Food Hub. And then the name change at the state became The Range. And I won't give you the acronym, but it's a good one. And so I believe its vision is really to utilize all of the resources that the Panhandle has already at its disposal and lead in that, to become, an entity that's a growth engine for food development and other things. So they have some other outcomes that deliverables that they've sent over to us. They've educated us as a body and individually. Our issue was, I was a councilman at that time, place 1, and so I did vote for this. It was a $100,000 membership fee, and so in 2021, I think, or 22, I had voted for it, and so somewhere along the line, the two organizations had discussions and got an approval amongst themselves to change that membership fee from $100,000 to $250,000. It didn't come back to council, and then they needed the money advanced in a 3-year upfront payment. So it went from $250 to $750. And so the issue that council has with this, and so you guys hear us say it, we are the authorizing unit. And so the state law compels us to have oversight over our EDC, over the AEDC. And so everything comes to this body for an approval, and then they are an arm and an extension for economic development, and you want that. You want an independent organization, a nonprofit out there trying to do really good economic development and attracting new jobs, retaining jobs, growing business so that we can compete with other entities or other cities all across the state. What you don't want is you don't want a budget or policy that is so lax that anything and everything may or may not have been approved, and that this authorizing unit doesn't know what they authorized and what they didn't authorize. So a couple weeks back, I had an opportunity to have a discussion with, at the time, and there's 5 board members. At the time, Andrew Hall and Scott Bentley were on that board. The other one that's still on this board currently is Adrian Meander, but I didn't have a conversation with him because he really wasn't part of what they call their budget committee, and so the 2 individuals that I chose to speak to were Andrew and Scott, and so also with their director, and then we did have an exec session to discuss. This is an ongoing ask, so this entity is still requesting an incentive package from the city. So in that exec, we were able to discuss, is that something that we would want to support or not, and we talked through that. But then now we're having a public meeting to discuss, like, is the range something that this council can support, and then how was this funded, and really where do we go from here? So I want to summarize by saying I think we as a body take our job as an oversight committee and an oversight board pretty seriously, in the way in which we're being compelled under law. It's the law requirement that says the authorizing unit must or shall approve. Now, could we approve that in a general budget? Hey, here's $20 million, go out there and do economic development. I mean, maybe, I think you might get challenged in a number of ways. Did we approve this as a previous body for a $100,000 expenditure? We did. Did it come back to their board? It did not formally, so it wasn't noticed to the public, and we don't have a record of it changing from 100 to 250. So I think that the amount of money that was expensed causes this body to need to walk through let's review these policies. Where have we not had good policy with our EDC? Let's work alongside and with the Economic Development Board. And then let's take the steps to correct this. So one, it doesn't happen again. And two, if there's any level of corrective action, it's taken in the right manner. Now, that all being said, I only needed to have a conversation with two on their current board because they were the ones that were walking this out at the time. And that, once again, is Andrew and Scott. And so I asked Les Simpson, Councilman Simpson, if he would work with me on this. So Councilman Simpson and myself had a meeting with their two board members last Friday. And I'm going to tell you kind of a quick summary, and then I'll see if Les wants to add to any of this. In the meeting, we feel like our job is oversight, and we need to come to you, identify the issue, and then ask you how you want to reconcile it. So rather than us coming in and saying, hey, here's what you're fixing to do, or else, I think what we're trying to do is say, here's what's happened. Let's call it what it is. First of all, let's acknowledge it and not try to say it didn't happen or that it should have happened. Let's state, should not have happened, not the correct way to go about it. And then, three, how can we hold ourselves accountable? How can you as the EDC board hold yourselves and let us work alongside of you, other than us having to be the governing authority that we're going to hold you accountable and there's going to be consequences. So that is the premise to try to get this conversation kicked off. I expect a pretty good discussion here, and I think we'll work through this issue here today out in public. So, Councilman Simpson, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, a couple of things, and I think you did a good job of summarizing that. A couple of things I will say, just going back to the range, one additional part of the range history, a couple of things I think are worth pointing out. One, that the range, this idea of capitalizing, one of the things that we have in this community and the EDC recognize, because this whole project came out of the EDC. I mean, they conducted a study to look at when communities have synergies, such as in North Carolina, they have the Triangle. Austin, Kansas City have all done similar types of things to what was being proposed in this. How do they do that? And we have in our community something that very few communities have. Very few, which is a vet school, a pharmacy school, and a medical school, all in one city and one location, as well as what goes on the agriculture. So that's kind of what spurred this on to get this going. And then obviously they were working to try to get to fund this. But I do think, from my perspective, the issue is not necessarily so much about the range. The range just had to come up at this particular point in time, but it's a lack of clarity on what the policies are on approval of money spent. My perception, and after the conversation that we had, is I think both Scott and Andrew realized, particularly in the retrospect and hindsight, they had a policy where, the chair and the vice chair would be a budget committee, if you will, and they felt that they had the authority, without going back to the board, to reshuffle money in the budget. If it wasn't being used for something, it could be reallocated. But there's no clear policy on how that is to be handled and what needs to be brought back forth. So I think, what I left the meeting from with Scott and Andrew was really feeling, yeah, in hindsight, this could have been handled a lot better and a lot more transparent and running through that. I think they totally realize that. Policies at that time, they felt, were not clear on that, or that policies in the law were kind of silent on that. And, they were, and the mayor can kind of go over this, they were more than ready to come back to us and say, we've looked at this, and here are some things that we feel like should be put into place to provide clarity. Let's remember, on the council, sometimes we've had an issue with that. On, you have to give staff flexibility to manage the day-to-day of the business when it comes to the finances, but there has to be oversight and accountability. The question is, how do those two meet? How do you give freedom and flexibility so that every time someone wants to purchase a pencil, they don't have to come back to this group to purchase it? That would not work. But then also there has to be oversight and approval, and how do you match the two up, the giving the flexibility so you don't bog things down with the accountability. And I think, we've kind of seen that here where there's a little bit of, unclear of how that goes and needs to be clarified. And I think that the same way is here. And hopefully we can come up with some policies and procedures and look back at some things to determine what types of policies and procedures that we need to put in place that allows the flexibility that you need to run an organization that doesn't bog it down, but make sure that we are fulfilling our oversight on what we do for the citizens to make sure that their money is being spent in a way that's transparent. And I think what they also mentioned was, when you're dealing with the public money, you have to have the highest level of accountability. And that means sometimes that may even exceed what the law says. It has to be above reproach. And I think they realize they could see how in this instance it wasn't transparent in how they're doing it. I guarantee you if they had the chance to do it again, they would go back and run it through the public like we have tried to do with all that. And so, but I think it was a good conversation, and I think we've got some items to look at potentially going forward that can provide clarity on this, as well as kind of looking back to see, are there some other things that we need to look at, or other things that would give us maybe additional information on policies and perspectives that we need to implement.
So I'm going to ask council, I have a few things that I'd like to lay out, but I would pause and just let council add to anything if they wanted to jump in now, and then I'll go back to direct.
I'd like to.
Yes, sir.
I realize they've got to have some flexibility. But in my opinion, they came and asked for $100,000 and then spent $750, so they knew they needed to come. But yet, at the end of the day, they decided to do it without a vote from their board and without approval from the city council. I cannot, from a citizen standpoint that I have been contacted by, the citizens don't like any of this. They say it doesn't look right, it doesn't smell right, there's something wrong. Whenever you try to hide $650,000, there's something wrong. And I think it is our responsibility. Now, can we fix it? That's what we got to work on. I think we need to see a new set of bylaws that addresses the issues that so much money's like the city, we can spend $50,000, then it's got to come to the council. We don't get to spend $650,000 just out of the blue. I think we need to have bylaws that address each and everything. Nobody should have the right to make, without a vote of a committee, to go and move $650,000. If we allow that, none of us should be sitting where we're sitting today. And I know we're coming up on a budget item here, and the way I feel, we don't need to approve a budget until we see what they're going to do to fix this. That's what I got to say.
Okay, thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Well, I just want to clarify, I think there's a lot of confusion here, too, is these asks happened with a previous council. This was not this council. The $100,000 ask was not with this council. The $650,000 was not with this council. We're not a part of it, and I will tell you, I can only speak as an individual, not for the whole council. I would not have supported that. I would have wanted to see an ROI, return on investment, from this thing to show that we would actually prepay 3 years membership fee to anything, not just this, but anything. The policies, as y'all well know, you voted us in, whether you voted for us or not. There was a complete change up here. And with that change was a change in culture. We're more transparent, I feel like. We're very fiscally conservative, as you've seen us go through the budget. You've seen us go through these things. We're trying to do what's right with the money, with the taxpayer money, at every level. So this is an interesting situation because this is an entity outside of us. So I think some members of the community felt like we had complete authority over this, or we have authority over the individuals that are involved in this. We don't. If we did, we'd be talking to Grayson, and we'd hopefully get something done with this. We do appoint that board, and there's some things that we can do in that type deal, but we'll look at it. Just so you know, I mean, again, I'm speaking as one person. In fact, I hadn't even talked to anybody up here about any of this, but don't like it. I don't like it at all. I mean, $750,000, and I'm not stirring the pot, but we didn't talk about the $190 that was spent on the study before that. So really, we're talking about $1 million without being asked. But again, the policies were very different with the previous mayor, previous council, minus one. It was just very different. I think they had kind of more of a carte blanche. They could spend what they wanted to at the EDC, didn't have to ask. The procedures, we've looked at it. There's no violation of a policy that we can hold them accountable for, that you violated this. But you would think that with that spend, or we would think very differently, of you need to ask. And that just didn't happen. So I agree with Tom on the fact that we need to start looking at different policy to put that in place that somewhat mirrors or is similar to ours of you can spend up to a certain amount without an ask, right? That's just fiscally responsible. You don't get to just dig in the wallet because there's money there and spend it, or shuffle it or reallocate, or we don't like that. As you know, you've seen it up here. You've seen us push back on that. And we feel the very same way with this. It's just an interesting situation because we don't have a lot of authority over this, but yet, because they're sitting outside of us. So I would agree that we need to come up with policy. I know Mayor has some suggestions to come up with, but I think that we definitely need to implement that and ask or let them come to us and let them offer what they're willing to do. So,
yeah, so I have a lot to say. But before I get into it, did they offer a solution as to what they were wanting to do?
So they did. We did collaborate last Friday, so they brought a few things that they think would be good for them, and then Councilman Simpson and myself had 2 or 3 things that we would like to see, and they agreed. And then, my position on this is trying to remain in a legal position of requirement. I don't want to do anything less of what I'm legally responsible to do. But then I also want to do this one step at a time. So I'm not going to try to sit up here and forecast 9 steps down the road of doing, this or that. I think we need to walk this out together. And so I'll be happy to share what those are now, or I can let you speak, and then we'll go back to that. I was curious
if they had just had anything yet. So I know for me as an individual council member, this is principally an issue. You're talking bad policy in place, absolutely no policy. And to me, I personally believe that as an authorizing unit, it is ultimately our responsibility as a city council to hold them accountable. When you're talking a manner of not only $750,000, but over $1 million, and plus making thousands of dollars of building deposits on top of that, I'm not willing to turn a blind eye and not look back, whether it's 2 years or 3 years at previous expenditures. But moving forward, this is a very, very big policy issue, in my opinion, that we need to address.
Okay. You have anything further?
Not at this time, no.
Okay.
Mayor, I would, is it okay if I just
Yes, sir, go ahead.
I just want to go, I had individual conversations with everyone involved in this. And then I had a group conversation. So when I hear terms like hiding money or those types of things, I'm gonna push back on that a little bit. These are people, at least one of them that have served our community for many years, people that dedicate their time in serving the community, and to intimate, I wish, I don't know, I'll let you feel your viewpoint after the conversation that we have to them. But to intimate that they were trying to do something underhanded or hide something, I don't think that was ever their intent. I think it was a policy. It was a way of doing business. But I think to use language to say that people are hiding something or doing something, I think that's a little bit pushing it a little bit for people that are donating their time and giving to the community. So I think in retrospect, they would say, boy, we should have done that differently, but these are people that are giving their own time. I don't think for a second anybody was hiding the money or doing anything like that. I think they were doing what was an acceptable procedure at the time that they now realize was an unacceptable procedure.
Correct. And let me agree, but let me also push back just a little bit. So I want to facilitate a conversation that's natural and isn't so formal that we can't speak freely. So I don't want any council person to feel like just because the camera's rolling and we're out here in public that we need to not speak the way we feel. And so, our community can be trusted, and we're going to allow you to hear what you hear, but we're going to speak freely. And so I don't feel like we've got to walk on eggshells, and if you feel like you were going around the system, then speak freely. However, I would say that from a point of professionalism, we can always separate policy from people. And so it's not the person that I'm looking at, it's the policy that allows for a behavior that's not under the law. And so I would say that we can focus on policy, but then I also would say that I think we can speak freely. And so the word hide in that term, to me, I would just try to clarify and let Councilman Sherlin say anything else he would want to, but it wasn't done in public, and we're using a descriptive word of not putting it on an agenda and not voting for it publicly, not bringing it to council. And some of the other conversations that we've had is whether you knew better or not, you have to know better. Like, you have to know that you have to follow these rules and these regulations. We don't get the luxury of working outside of those and saying, well, we didn't know. So that being said, I would try to gear us or steer us forward. Did you have something else, sir?
No.
Okay. Let me start with the positive in this. So the positive is that the range is something that is not in our discussion specifically. It is the event that happened, but the policies of the procedures are with our EDC. We're not the oversight body of the range. This is not an issue between this council and this incentive agreement or anything else that previous council did. This is an issue of oversight from this governing unit to its EDC, and so we'll keep it targeted there. Now, acknowledging that the monies went to the range or had to do with this or that is fine. We have two board members, one of whom that I've known for 25 plus years, and I find him to be a exceptional individual and above board and a good banker and an individual that I don't feel that his intentions were deceptive or deceitful. I think he didn't know maybe what he was doing fully in getting all this done. And so I can give a little benefit for the individuals because I have that relationship. However, none of y'all do. So we're not going to walk this out relationally. We're going to walk this out programmatically, procedurally, right? So you have two individuals that are willing to acknowledge, one, this shouldn't have happened, and two, we're going to do what it takes to make sure it doesn't happen again. I believe that their board, will meet and discuss all of the things that we're fixing to say, and then they'll be able to agree or disagree, but ultimately you gentlemen have the authority. These are the three things that they brought forward. Two I agree with. Purchases or expenditures that exceed a budgeted line item by $50,000 or more will be required to go back to the AEDC board and then for council approval. So let's go back to kind of the standard MO or method of operation. You would approve a board or a budget. Let's say their total revenues are $28 million. They may have a line item of $500,000 for marketing or $800,000 for, infrastructure repairs or whatever. And so what they were doing underneath their budget was moving money or pulling money from a line item budget that they didn't use. Well, we didn't need that marketing, so we had, $500,000 available. So we used that to fund this. And so that is the procedural issue here that they are trying to correct by saying any line item budget, or specifically anything that's not line item budget, would have to come for approval. They would like to meet quarterly with the ADC and the council to do a financial budget review and to continue walking everything out, showing here's our progress, here's the things we're doing. Number three was they wanted to have the mayor and the EDC board chair required signature on any transaction that's over $500,000. So it is typical for them to make $1 million payment. And that may be in a wire transfer, it may be in a check, but their board chair has to sign and authorize that, because that may be in an incentive package to, let's say, Texas Tech or whatever. I don't want to have the mayor's signature on that. I feel like that is their board chair. The mayor has no rights outside of this body together. And so we don't have any reason for a mayor to have a stroke of a pen that authorizes anything. Plus, everything that we're going to work towards right now will be a budgeted line item. You already got your approval from this body, and you need to come back to this body if you're going to exceed that. So I would not move forward with number 3. Number 4 were Councilman Simpson and I's request, and they, did say, hey, if there's anything else that's gone on, we want to know about it too. So number 4, 3-year financial review, all expenditures and the fund balance that they come from. And so I believe we need to look back for 3 years to see and be able to show you, our public, that this is not a way of doing business that's been something that's gone on. This is not something that's going on in multiples. This is one item that we've seen that they are now saying, hey, we shouldn't have done this, but we need that healthy review of all their financials to see where it is. So they invite that. We had talked about doing it at $50,000 and above. I think after discussing it a little bit further, maybe $25,000 and above would be a little bit more appropriate. So what we've got to do is we're going to try to direct our staff to go and gather all these financials for the previous year, then the previous 2, then the previous 3. I have an idea of what I'd like this spreadsheet to look like, and I'd like council to weigh in on it. What I'm not trying to do is I'm not trying to get their credit card statement and go through and see how many people ate dinner and why did it cost $300. I'm also not trying to get staff into lengthy reviews or inquiries where you're bogged down in credit card receipts. And so $25,000 and above for an entity that runs $28 million a year, and we're talking about incentive guidelines, to me is fine. I would appreciate if council thinks that's a good measure. We are going to need the AEDC to pay for all of this. We cannot allow our staff to go over there at the burden of our taxpayer out of our general fund. So whatever the cost is to do this, they're going to need to do this. Here is what I would like this to look like. Council, you guys can follow along and advise me. I am seeing a simple spreadsheet. It would be great if it was something where we could click on it and see what the actual, invoice looked like or the documentation was. But even if we just have the numbers, what I think we want to review as council is, the check number or the wire, the date, the vendor name, the amount, the funding source, which is very important so that we can point to, hey, this was out of our marketing amount, and it went for marketing to this marketing company. And then the funding source, was it approved? So is that a funding source that was specifically approved in a line item, or was this just approved in the general budget? So it would be a yes or a no, specific funding source and approval. A no may mean that it is in their budget, but it wasn't specifically approved. It was never noticed on a meeting. And then the personal contact. So what we're looking for there is there an individual or an entity that is moving through multiple areas that shouldn't be? And so, like, if I'm always the guy making requests and I needed money for marketing but also infrastructure, I may not be a legitimate actor in that. So we could eliminate, hopefully, a lot of suspicion by being this investigatory and by being this thorough. And our hope would be is that we can present to you 3 years financials showing that your EDC has not been used as kind of a personal piggy bank for anyone. Now, we've been very clear in saying if that's the case, we have a whole nother set of problems. And that will bring on an additional meeting, and we'll have totally different corrective actions. Now, with this, if my council is good with moving forward here, I need about, I'm going to say 30 days. Maybe we could get through the first year financials and get that into our hands, let everyone on council review it. Maybe we can get through year 2 and kind of see where we're at. So I'm curious if council is okay moving one step at a time Because this action, even though is pretty egregious, isn't something that I'm trying to take that next step of how do we consequence this. I think what this action has done is it's made me more aware of we need to set some good policies and procedures. I'd like to do that in a meeting from board to board. And then we need a thorough financial review. So, council, where are you guys at in just walking this out one step at a time? And then what would you like to add to in this spreadsheet?
I agree walking out like that, but I also think we need to add, I know Mr. Carter is our director of AEDC. He also serves on the board of the range. I think that's a total conflict of interest. I think we need to, if they want to elect a representative to the range boards, I think their board needs to do that. I don't think just because our director goes here and goes there, that's just basically total conflict of interest, my opinion.
Okay, so we would just go back to maybe what Councilman Simpson said, you know, let's avoid even the appearance and be above reproach. And so if we have potential conflict of interest in positional places, we would remove those and correct those, or ask them to correct those. Anything else on the spreadsheet that you guys would like to direct staff on?
Not on the spreadsheet, no.
Okay.
Did you say we're going to look at all of them, not just the increases or the asks? I mean, if it's a budgeted line item.
All expenditures over $25,000.
Okay.
So if we have a $50,000 payment to XYZ and it wasn't approved at a board meeting and it's not coming from a fund source, you're now going to have a vendor and you may want to know, well, who is that vendor?
Okay.
And what did they do? And it may be very legitimate. Well, that's the vendor that we use for all of these things. But then our community would be given a very thorough look at all the financials for the AEDC.
And there'd be a yes or no box for.
Was it approved at
Gotcha.
a board meeting? Was it approved in a line item? Or would it be considered unfunded even though it may be within their overall budget?
Yeah.
And so we did specify a copy of the actual invoice or paid stub within that spreadsheet, or no?
So I think if that's going to be up to staff. So I think if staff has something that, you know, here's their request and it's easy for us to attach it, then we're going to be greatly served to see that invoice. But as it is with the range, there's no formal document. There was no invoice. There's not a membership card. So we don't have anything to look at. So I think it goes to substantiating the legitimacy of expenditures. If you have copies of all those, we want to see them. But if you don't, then I think it's still very helpful for us to see the amount of the money and who the payee is.
Mayor, if I could real quick, we actually have Unil Gerber with us. He's our internal auditor. I asked him to come so he can have a conversation with y'all so we can go back and forth and discuss the thoughts here on the audit. So Unil, could you come up real quick? And so we can, because we want to make sure that we can give you all the product you're asking for. So Unil, if you could talk about this. And
Afternoon, sir.
Hello, Council, Mayor. Yeah, so you're throwing me into the thick of things again. But yeah, we'll be glad to assist. Let's just know that my team is limited, so didn't hear that. How's that?
There you go.
Okay.
Thank you.
So my team is a little limited, so I know you're saying 30 days. We'll push and see if we can get that.
One thing that we could ask for is we would like 3 years review.
Okay.
But you don't have to do 3 years worth of work and then set 600 pages on our desk.
Yeah.
So if you could do a year and then hand that over, let us start reviewing that.
Right.
And then maybe a wait further need for that, or you start on year 2. We could definitely see something that's like, okay, man, we've seen enough.
Okay.
You know, but then again, maybe we need 3 full years.
Yeah, because your year one should give you an indication of there's more to it. It's normally how our audit works. We'll look at one section. If we find exceptions, we'll roll it up.
Specifically, what we're not trying to do, though, Mr. Gerber, is a sample. We're not saying, hey, just sift around over here and dig 3 or 4 receipts out and let's check them out.
Yeah.
What we're trying to do is we're trying to show our public that our EDC board is inviting this level of review. It's not a formal audit, but that they want to know as well. you know, hey, do we have a practice of business here that is not allowable? Or do we just have one issue here that we need to overcome? And then I think both boards would be well served to do that together. What are you seeing in this 25,000 to 50,000? Would you say that's going to get you up out of the weeds enough?
Yeah, I think 25 might be a little low, but I haven't looked at every line item at this time. There's large amounts that's coming through looking at the 23 numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the majority of it we are going to hit, even if we go 50 and above.
Council,
Total.
Council, do you guys want to try to alleviate any of the load at 50, or are you good with staying with the 25? The only reason that the conversation between Les and myself went down is it's easy to get in your fishbowl up here, and you're running a $500 million budget, and $50,000 doesn't sound like a lot. But $50,000 is a lot of money, and I don't want to communicate to my citizen that, like, we're kind of flippantly just pushing 50 grand aside, and so the 25 mark would keep us outside of, like, your typical catering, events, things like that we may not necessarily be looking at.
Well, and from our approach, too, what we'll do is we'll do some analytical, so we'll look by vendor spend. Okay, so we got a vendor here that we're always using for catering. We spend $200,000. So then we'll look at that angle as well. So not just specific to that individual expense line.
Could
have a picture of, okay, here's the guys that we're spending money on.
Right.
And out of the budget, that's the biggest cut goes to ABC.
Because we know we have a scrutiny on this with some citizens that are just like a dog on a bone.
Yeah.
Literally. Like, can we reconcile this to a point of, okay, here's all the totals of $25,000 and below, and that's $4 million. And then here is your $24 million worth of expenditures, and you can see that those two add up and that the budget reconciles. That way we would avoid the suspicion of, well, you only showed me the ones and you pulled anything else out. So there would be a reconciliation. And that would be something pretty easy for you to do just in running it on the software.
Yeah, and then the thing is I can give you a percentage of what we looked at to total. So we can do that as well.
Okay. Yeah, that would be great. So a percentage, let's say 50% of all their expenditures are up over 25,000.
Yeah. And if we look at, and here's the support, and this is what we found.
Council, questions for you, Neil?
Now, does any of this stuff we talked about, it's inside your scope, correct?
Yes. That'll be in the scope, but that's with direction from you guys. We'll do what you request us to do.
This half? Anything? Okay. Mr. Path, anything else you wanted to add? Okay. Hey, thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Appreciate you. Sorry to put you in the middle. So I'm not going to allow this to be one of those things where we're going to shy away from it. It's an awkward conversation. It's not necessarily the easiest thing to run up here. And this isn't anything that any of us have done wrong. We don't know that anything's been done wrong other than these $750,000 expenditures. I want to try to maintain as much professionalism and forward progress on this as possible with my community. We're not going to duck or dodge your questions, but at the same time, we also are not going to try to jump to any conclusions. And we're going to work through this the way that you would like us to work through it on your behalf. At the end of every day, you're still our boss, and we need to be able to give you an accounting. So with that, I think that would be my next step, if you guys are good with this. And then I would ask if everyone is good to kind of leave it at that point, turn it over to staff, or if you guys want to do anything else. We do have a budgetary item that we could discuss later.
When will the policy discussion take place? As far as what policies are going to be put in place, when are they going to be enacted upon? Is that up to their board?
We had a meeting with the AEDC when we first kind of got all onboarded, and we asked them to put together a consulting firm and a strategic business plan. In hindsight, that was very smart because this is going to coincide right on time. And so they should have their consultant ready to meet in October. I don't think we would have the numbers back that we need and you know, a direction of, you know, how significant is this one issue until then. And so I think the policy directives could be given during that strategic business planning kind of consortium.
Okay.
Mayor, I've got just a couple other things. One is, and I don't know whether we need AEDC to do this or us, but one thing is when we do look at the AEDC's budget, it's not coming out of the same financial system that we are using here. I mean, it's put together on a spreadsheet. So one additional request that I would have is, and maybe if staff can handle this, I don't know what, that when we're presented their budget, it comes out of the system in the same format that the city budget does. So I don't know if that would be difficult to do. We're doing all that for them, but I think just to make sure that the information is not someone that's putting something in a spreadsheet, but it's going through the same documentation that we put the city budget through would be one thing that if we could do that, I'd request. Let me ask the city manager a couple questions. And I understand, Mayor, Mr. City Manager, is there a check and balance on if a request comes over to send money? We handle all the finances. Is there a check and balance here on our side to check that money off to say, even if ADC requests it, it's another check? I think that's what they were suggesting. Well, I think I agree with the mayor. The mayor may not be the best person to check that off as something that's already been approved. But is there a system right now that if it comes over that there's another check to make sure that that money is authorized for the city to send out to whoever it may be?
Yeah, the current way, as I understand the agreement, is because we're the fiscal agent, and so the way it works in summary is they identify for us how much to spend and where it goes to, and so then staff will verify the money's there. Otherwise, we don't sit there and determine whether it's an appropriate expense or not. That's not the way the agreement is written, as I understand it, and so we don't verify whether we feel it's appropriate or not. But otherwise, we get the request from whether staff member, either Mr. Carter, whoever it is, what the amount is, where it's got to go, and then we verify whether it's in the funds to spend.
Well, I guess that would be my question. I guess not necessarily if it's appropriate, but just confirming that correlates to it. Again, we're not, whatever may be in agreement, but if we're saying we want to be above reproach, should there be another check and balance on this side just to confirm that is money that was approved, budgeted, whatever it may be, or if it's unbudgeted, if someone over here would just say, wait a minute, that's not in there, or is that?
Yeah, we can certainly create a policy to that effect, yes. If you'd like for us to have that layer, we can.
And only on the large amounts. I'm not talking but if it's a significant amount, is there a check and balance to make sure that money is supposed to be drafted?
Again, we've the city historically has not taken the stance that we will serve as their overseer when it comes to this is or is not an appropriate expense. But we can certainly create a policy that where we add the extra layer where we may examine, was this in a budget? Was it not? Was it discussed in minutes? Was it not? That could be something we could add.
Okay. And then, do you have any other thoughts or any observations from kind of what we've been discussing from your perspective on this topic?
No, I think it's all been discussed very well here so far.
Thank you.
Yeah. One other thing I wouldn't be opposed to is putting in place immediately a $50,000 over requires their board approval and ours until we get policies in place.
Yeah, and I think with their budget, we could look at approving their budget here with some additional constraints today, or we could not approve their budget here today, and we could go ahead and walk this down. We have a little time until it's due, and so we can just leave that as a future item, depending on where council sits. And I've thought through that pretty greatly in the deal of what are we communicating to our public? We had a previous budget, we didn't follow it, so here we are approving a new budget, and we don't have the new guidelines or the policies, and we really want to do this with their board, and it's going to start to feel pretty one-sided, I think, if we're not careful. So in the continuity of working well together, it may be okay to not have that budget approved here today and just look at it later in the month, possibly, or to look at some constraints. Has council given any thought to maybe what that would look like? I know you said $50,000 and above.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with not approving their budget today when that item comes to wait.
Any other thoughts?
I agree with not approving the budget. I would say just operational funds they can get, and anything above 50,000 needs to be approved.
Let's ask staff. I don't know if Mrs. Storrs or maybe Mr. Path would know. October 1, is what the city has to have in place, or else we have some issues, and you got to go do a budget amendment and all sorts of stuff. They're a nonprofit as an entity, an extension. So, what time constraints do we really have with them? Is it fine to not approve the budget until we put in the new guidelines, and can they continue to operate operationally underneath the existing budget?
So we are going to have to do some more research on that. If council would like to table the item for today, we could bring some more information back possibly next Tuesday at the council meeting. At this point, though, it doesn't appear that it would work similar to the way like a local government works, where it's very heavily tied to a property tax rate. So if you don't approve the rate, you automatically go back to what you had previously. But we certainly want to be conscious of the fact that AEDC does have outstanding debt service payments and several other obligations that we would want to make sure that they have the ability to handle, even if we crossed over into a new year. So if council's okay with it, we would appreciate maybe a few days to start researching this, and we could bring an update, or maybe we could table that item till next week and bring an update at that point in time as well.
And Mrs. Storrs, you're the treasurer of the ADC. So as the treasurer and as the fiscal agent on this side, do you have some abilities that we're not capitalizing on in the way in which you're handling those contractual obligations already? Those could be submitted, to council easily. You could have that constraint of just awareness, and then we more or less would just move forward knowing that we have their treasurer, which is also our CFO, that's watching the books while we put these in place. And, their operational costs are going to continue to get met, plus their contractual obligations.
Yeah.
But outside of that, there wouldn't be anything else that would move.
Yes, I mean, we could certainly put something like that in place for the time being. I'm the treasurer on their board, not a voting member, but do have the ability to have access to the information from both that point and on the fiscal agent side. So we could put parameters in place, as Councilmember Kraft said, if we wanted to kind of separately look at things over 50 in the time, in the meantime, until we get some better policy or some additional policies in place, I think we could absolutely accommodate something like that. And I'm sure AEDC would be willing to work with us on that.
Council, anything on that? Or I feel like we're moving in a good direction.
Yeah, one thing I don't want this to become is a political football. I mean, that we're, tossing the same back and forth for really no reason other than politically. I don't know that there's any, what was done was done. It wasn't done under us. I'll be very interested in my talks that I've had with staff and with others is it's been very transparent since we took office, like whole very different than what it used to be. And I think that was the case. So I just don't want it to become a political football or create unnecessary work for our staff. I don't know if this is a penalty or if this is a message that we would send by saying, hey, we're not going to approve your budget. Mm-hmm. I don't know that we're too concerned that someone's going to go out and spend another $1 million without us knowing about it. I don't think that that's going to happen. I don't think it could happen. So that's just my word of caution to say. But if we hold off on the budget, we hold off on the budget. But is that are we just sending a message, or are we what are we doing? By not doing that. I guess let's just be open here and do this outside.
I appreciate the consideration on it. Yes, sir.
I don't see it as a budget issue. I see it as the oversight issue. I mean, we've looked at the budget. If there's something we've got a problem with in the budget, but to me, the budget's not the issue. It's the oversight. Whenever we want to approve it, I would be ready to approve it. I don't think we're talking about the budget. We've had the review, looked at it. I think it's the oversight is what we need to get a handle on.
Correct. And I would agree with Kraft over here saying if we could put something in place, immediately of any expenditure over whatever that we have to approve it until we have official, and I think that they'd be compliant with it. I mean, Les talking to them, it sounds like they would be open to that. I don't necessarily want to restrict what they're doing or send the wrong message, because there have been some good things that they're doing over there.
Correct.
Yes, sir.
Their budget, the way it's presented, is real open. It's really, in my opinion, it's not a budget. It's a spreadsheet, as Les pointed out. A budget's like what we look at. We got 800 pages, and it tells you exactly we're going to buy pens and we're going to buy. Theirs just says advertising or this. I really think we need a budget in a budgetary process that is like any other business, because this one had so many holes in it, they could just move money around. Now, I agree with Councilman Simpson here that a lot of this is oversight, but we need to bring it in reins and see. I want to know what you're spending the money on, instead of just $1 million here or $1 million there.
So let me add to maybe let me clarify what I'm saying so that everyone can hear it very directly. I think I'm proposing to go slow and to not approve the budget today. It doesn't necessarily have an expiration date on it. I don't want to miscommunicate, and so if anyone heard that we're not going to approve your budget, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm considering is, let's not approve their budget today, and let's give ourselves some time with staff to work through. Do they have any expiration dates on them as a nonprofit like we do as a city, since their rate's already set? It's a portion of sales tax. So I think I would be good with not approving the budget today and not sending the wrong message, because I could see how that gets mismessaged.
For what purpose? What purpose would we not approve the budget today? What are we going to find that would change that?
So the same holes you've always had.
But with oversight. With oversight.
Well, yeah, but we got to put the oversight in place before you. If I just give them a budget of $28 million, that's what you're doing, without any oversight in place yet. I think until we get oversight, we don't need to give them money.
So that's the reason for the pause. So you think that we could get oversight in place officially before? Is that a stipulation?
Specifically, what I would try to step towards is an approval of their budget with some additional constraints until we are newly set up guidelines and we have a time to meet. And these constraints are just additional things that are checks and balances. It's not changing their abilities to spend the money that they're already obligated for. But I am also aware that everything we say sends a message. And so I'm not saying we're not sending a message by talking about constraints. We are. But we're also sending a message, I think, by just approving the budget. And I don't know that that's the message I'm trying to send either.
Do we have well, I guess we can just go back and forth on this. I guess I just don't see. I agree. We definitely need oversight. We're not moving forward till we have oversight, period. And I would agree 100%.
Let me say it another way. I would like to have a council that can vote for all of our budgets, and I don't want to split a 3-2 or a 2-3 vote on a budget item. And that sends a different message. So rather than having you vote for or against it today based on, well, we didn't really this or that, I think it might be better if we could put some constraints in, and then everybody's everyone's in a greater level of agreement for moving forward. Yeah. So it is on my schedule here today, and what I'm trying not to do is ask my council to vote for or against their budget. I don't know why we would ever want to vote against a budget when we can control it. So I would rather take a few extra weeks and make sure that that budget's the way that we all want it. So maybe from a point of leadership, there's a tactic there.
Are you asking to table it? Of course, we're not there, and I know we're not.
We're not there.
I don't even know if we're supposed to be discussing.
We'll
this
get
right
there.
now,
Well, it's a discussion, so
but
we'll get there.
Well, I guess the question would be, if their budget takes effect October 1st.
Well, that is the question.
We have one more meeting on the 24th before that, but
we have two, but I don't know.
We're not going to have the results from. We may not determine the full extent of what the oversight might look like.
But what I'm saying is, with staff earlier today, we talked about how their October 1st is not the same as ours. Ours has some consequences if we don't have everything noticed to the state because of our tax rate and everything we're doing. We would have a budget amendment. I think we want to allow staff an opportunity to research this and see, do they have to have a budget in place October 1, or do we have more time?
Yes, and just to be clear, yes, staff, we want to come back to the council the 7th and 24th and educate everyone on what we find out about proving October 1st or not, whether they do or do not have a start like we do. We don't know the answer to that today.
Yes, sir.
Oh, and my last question is, I know I said immediate, but the $50,000 approval from board to board, that would require a bylaw change, correct? ADC bylaw change? Or can that be done immediate? I mean,
I'm not sure that it would require a bylaw change, but you could make it a bylaw change if you wish. I think you've got multiple options there.
yeah, but can we do this, like, can we put it in immediately, $50,000 requirement?
I think you could. You just need buy-in from their side, so it sounds like you have that.
So I am moving us forward in the conversation. I think that when we get to that item, I do feel it would be in the best interest of all parties involved to table that, give staff a little bit more time to bring something back, and we have until the 24th, to learn more. And I think going slow is always wise. Anything further on item 8E, gentlemen? Okay, item 8F. Anybody have anything they'd like to request? Okay, hearing none, we will move on to our consent agenda. Do I have anything in the consent agenda that needs to be pulled off for further discussion?
I'd pull item 9B.
9B?
Yep.
Minutes?
Yep.
Any others? So to confirm item 9B. Okay, so would ask for a motion excluding item 9B.
I'll make a motion, we accept the consent agenda as stated, all but 9D.
B is in boy. Am I correct? B is in boy?
Correct.
Yes.
B
is
in boy.
Yep.
B.
Right.
I'll second.
We got a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Want to take up item 9B separately because we are looking at consideration on the way that was noticed. So, Councilman Kraft, what is your concern there?
Just to follow up with what Mr. Dawson brought up earlier in the meeting today, just to reflect the meetings appropriately versus what's stated in the agenda packet.
Okay. So maybe we can hand this over to Brian. Brian, I think our concern is state law requirements in noticing an executive session under a work session, maybe how we closed the previous work session and adjourned, and then had you read us into exec.
Mm-hmm. Which is very normal. Sometimes there's lots of things that you're going to go into exec on, and you call them all, okay, depending on whatever council decides to do. It's up to council to run that exec the way they want to. My understanding was from the commenter was they wanted to amend the minutes to just add who was there, which you can do. So if you just want to add those who was there and at what time, then there's nothing wrong with that, and you can do that if you want.
So what we're looking at right there is the work session for the 2 o'clock exec. Is that correct?
It says work session, but.
And then is it normal to have minutes produced and publicated on executive sessions?
No.
Okay.
Executive sessions are under seal.
Are there minutes produced here about our exec session?
No, it's just the nature of what was called.
Can we scroll down so our public can see that? Is Mr. Dawson still here? He leave?
He left.
Councilman Kraft, do you understand maybe what his concern was specifically?
I think his concern was having the ADC director on the minutes I'm assuming it'd be for the executive session, but if
Right.
we don't do that, then. But I'm trying to understand. So we called to order and then we went in exec at 2:06, but we listed all the people that were in attendance. Does that make sense? At the
So,
top?
Mr. McWilliams, is there a reason that we did not list the EDC director under that?
I did not draft the minutes, so.
Right.
Typically, you don't do that, but you could if you want to.
Okay, is
If
there
you
an
wanna
issue
just-
with amending that, just so it's correct?
No, it's a simple motion to amend the minutes to reflect that Mr. Carter was present during the discussion related to 087.
There you go.
And the incentives. And that's the way your motion would be.
Yep, so moved.
Okay. All right, I'm going to look at my city attorney once more and see if there's anything further that we would need to do or to consider to be fully in compliant with state law.
No.
Okay, upon the advisement of our lawyer, I've got a motion. Do I have a second?
I mean, just to add, that's what all you're saying, just to add, you want to add Kevin Carter on here as in attendance.
Yeah, 'cause,
That's
I mean,
what he's
this
saying.
isn't brought up, on the minutes.
But it's not required.
It is not required. But you can do that if you wish.
I'll second, yeah.
I'm gonna ask here, Mr. Ford, would you come up to the microphone, please? We're going to give you an opportunity to explain your concern with this item in hopes to maybe refine it.
This is Mike Ford, Amarillo. Brian, this is a certified agenda. You cannot list the participants in a closed session.
Okay, so
You can't. That's a certified agenda you're creating, and if you put a participant in as attending a meeting, a closed session, that's part of the certified agenda. He can come back and sue the city.
Mr. Ford, that's already been stated as a matter of fact.
No, but you're talking about putting him in the 087 meeting. That's
So,
what you're
Mr.
saying
Ford,
right here.
what I want to ask you here, if you can answer my question specifically, in your opinion, from your experience in running public meetings, are you saying you should not amend these minutes?
No, don't, you can't, the closed sessions cannot indicate participants. That's your certified agenda, Mr. Mayor, and any other recording
And it's
is
closed.
supposed, is,
You
and
would
that's
have to
under
get
seal
that.
for 2 years.
Okay.
Only subject to inspection by a court, and a court can inspect it in camera and it's not publicly disclosed.
Okay, so because I don't know, I'm learning. Mr. McWilliams, is there any harm in not amending these minutes?
No.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ford.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Yeah, I guess.
Okay, so I have a motion, but I don't have a second.
Yeah, let it die.
Motion dies. Okay, still need to take action on item 9B as recorded.
I'll make a motion to approve item 9B as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second on item 9B. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we will move on to non-consent. Appreciate your patience and letting us learn as we go. Thank you, Mr. Ford. Item 10A. We've got a public hearing here. Brady Kendrick, Old Faithful.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Item 10A is a public hearing and consideration of Ordinance 8150. This is a public hearing and first reading to consider the rezoning of 0.76 acres of land that is unplatted in Potter County, Texas, in the vicinity of Broadway Drive and Hastings Avenue. The applicant is OJD Engineering, LLC. And they are proposing this rezoning to zone this property appropriately in order to be included in an upcoming multifamily project. The tract in question was originally proposed to be a public street in this area. However, the development plans changed, in which that is no longer going to be a public street, and instead it's going to be a private drive into the multifamily development, so it needs to be zoned appropriately to be a portion of the site. It does comply with the city plan place types and the complete neighborhood scenario for this area, so there are no issues there that the Planning and Zoning Commission found. And additionally, they found that it makes logical sense and is comprehensive to get this all zoned appropriately. We did send notice as required by state law, and as of this meeting, we have not received any comments on, well, we did receive one comment at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. He just had questions about what the request was and what's explained at the meeting. He did not express opposition to this item, and the Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval with a unanimous vote.
Mr. Kendrick, you are a true professional, very concise and efficient with our time. Thank you. Any questions from Mr. Kendrick? We would like to open a public hearing at this time. Do I have anyone that would like to speak for or against item 10A? Seeing no one, we'll close that public hearing and ask for a motion.
I move to adopt ordinance number 8150 as presented.
Second.
I have a motion from 4. I have a second from 2. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. On to item 10B. Mr. Kendrick, you once again.
This is a public hearing in consideration of ordinance 8151. This is a proposed annexation of 203.80 acres of land that is in the vicinity of Southwest 45th Avenue and the Soncy Road. This property is unplatted and also includes the west 50 feet of Tartar Avenue as dedicated in Soncy Park Addition Unit Number 10. And this property is in Randall County, Texas, in Section 62, Block 9, BS&F survey. And this is a property owner-initiated annexation request. And the developer intends to develop the property with a multi-phase multifamily project, a series of apartment complexes that will surround the Playa Lake that is in this area. They intend that Playa Lake will be a green space or park feature that is at this time proposed to be either maintained privately or potentially with a public improvement district that may be established. Those discussions are ongoing, but it's essentially intended to be private maintenance potentially. And there is approximately 89 acres of this area that is developable based on potential right-of-way and the park space. And they are proposing approximately 18 to 20 units per acre, which would come out to about 1,600 apartment units at full build-out in this area. At this stage, as this is a state-mandated public hearing for the item, as we set this today as the meeting per the resolution at the last meeting, and if approved today, the second reading will be on the 24th of September, and at that point, the service plan becomes binding and effective, and the property will be in the city at that point. Regarding utilities, this tract is already served with water and sewer, so there will not be utility extensions needed to serve the property as is. And as development occurs, the developers will be responsible for infrastructure extensions within the tract. Regarding emergency services, this area does have fire coverage as it exists, and the police department estimates that upon full build-out, based on the projected apartment units that and the anticipated population increase, that they would need approximately 3 additional officers to cover that additional population in the city. Upon annexation, we will begin to collect property taxes, and I know on some of our Potter County annexations recently, we were not going to collect sales tax. We will collect sales tax for this Randall County annexation. However, it is not the full amount. Randall County does have an assistance district as well, like Potter County, except they only take 0.5% instead of the full 2%. So there is still that 1.5% left over that is up for grabs, essentially. So they just do not take the full 2% like Potter County does. So we will collect a good chunk of the sales tax we typically would on this annexation. And then we also note that this annexation will encircle a small tract of land entirely by the city limits. State law does allow for this, provided that the governing body finds it is in the public interest to do so. This is another property owner in the area that did not consent for annexation. So based on Texas annexation laws being pretty specific about annexation being at the consent of the property owner, we did not include the tract in the boundary of this annexation. And if that owner at a future date wants to have that little slither of his lot brought into the city, he can do so on his own accord. But we do not find any issues with encircling this area with this annexation. We did post notice as required by state law, and we did not receive any comments on this request. And we have found that this item is ready for your consideration today. And I'll take any questions, and we also do have the representatives from the developer here as well.
Questions for Mr. Kendrick?
I have a question. That's a pretty large play lake in there, and that thing has filled up a number of times. Does a lake, will it encompass, who's going to keep this lake drained? Are they going to pay for the pump, or is the city of Amarillo got to figure out what to do with the water?
So generally, whenever you are making modifications within a floodplain, and anybody from CPD&E chime in, but they'll have to submit a drainage report that shows how their development is going to impact this area. And based on the items in that report, typically the developer is responsible for making the necessary modifications to ensure that they're not expanding that flood hazard area. So as this area builds out, they will have to have an engineer submit a drainage report proving what they will do will not create issues for the neighbors in the area.
Because from what I can see, if you put apartments all in that area, you're creating a massive more floodplain.
Yeah, and that is something that the city engineer's office will look at.
Kyle, do you mind to speak to that for us? Kind of tell us what you're going to require from their engineering firm?
Absolutely. Thank you. So, as Brady mentioned, they will have a drainage report that gets submitted with their proposed development. And what's evaluated in that drainage report is can be a myriad of things. But number one, if that lake is fully mapped, meaning it actually has a defined floodplain, then if it didn't have a defined elevation assigned to it, then that would be a requirement of the drainage report, is to actually define the 100-year flood boundary. That 100-year flood boundary then establishes as the floodplain administrator's regulatory authority over that lake. And so I can regulate anything inside that 100-year flood boundary. But anything outside that 100-year flood boundary is private property. And can be utilized as seen fit by the person who's developing that private property. And so, we would require that those regulations are met inside the flood boundary. No development within the flood boundary. If they are development within the flood boundary, well, that's a misnomer. But they can develop within the flood boundary if they do offsetting excavation or raise certain areas outside those flood limits. But all of those regulations would be enforced and identified in that flood drainage study submitted by the developer.
The only reason I'm asking is, for instance, the greenways.
Yep, great question.
We had to redo, we had to dig down, and the city has put a lot of money into that.
Yes, sir.
And what I'm trying to do is cut back. I mean, I understand we're going to get taxes, but I want to make sure we aren't impacted with more drainage problems, more flooding problems, and everything. So, I mean, is this normal procedure? We approve it first and then we get to study, or?
Well, so in the path of development, annexation does come first, and annexation typically does not require that full drainage analysis, but development does. And so annexation, bringing that private property into the city limits, is still private property. And then when that owner decides to do something, subdivide their land, put a business on it, put a home on it, that development process is what triggers the requirements for drainage. But your concern is still valid in that there are risks associated with development in and around a floodplain, and those are private property risks. And so our regulatory authority is the 100-year boundary in, not the 100-year boundary out. And our development policies are set up to keep that risk on the private property owners versus the city, but we do have to fully implement our drainage policy manual.
I'm going to tag along with Tom and say I think where he's going with this, because as we inherited a lot of things, we have to drain some lakes that are on private property, and it's to a great expense.
Yes.
I think that's his initial question is, we annex this thing and it becomes ours even though it's on personal property. Are we responsible for getting a temporary pump, spending $100,000 a month to rent that thing, to pump it against where it's naturally supposed to go?
Sure.
It's not on these guys if they develop it, and I get that they have to comply by the flood plain and all that kind of thing. Don't mean it's bad, but that's on y'all. I mean, it's up to you. That's your risk. That's not the city's risk. The city's risk is we pay $100,000 a month for these pumps to drain this down. I don't want that responsibility. We're already doing it enough, and it's ridiculously expensive. And we've done it with 100 year. They're in the 100-year plane, and we've been outside of that a whole lot more than 100 years.
Yes, sir.
So I guess that's what I think that's what he's asking. Is are we responsible for pumping that thing?
That's
if
a
we
great
annex
question. By law and by your policy, no, sir, you are not.
Are we responsible for pumping Bennett?
Bennett Lake, by law or policy, no, sir. The 100-year boundary is defined.
So we do it out of the goodness of our heart.
We do it as a operations criteria. Yep.
We do it as a public safety.
Public safety. Okay.
We do it as an operations.
Let me
an
redirect
operations
here.
goal, and public safety is part of that. Yes.
Because we have an expert here, and we may have somebody that could speak to the intentions. So, do you have any intentions of excavating, lowering the lake, working yourself towards a different, flood boundary?
Yes, sir. My name is Will Stevens with A&D Engineering, 6515 68th Street. That's a great point. I just want to bring up in the master service agreement that we agreed to with the city, it calls out that Ply Lake, the existing base flood elevation, excuse me, the curve number and the requirement of us to excavate any dirt that is needed to maintain that base flood elevation. So any impervious area or any concrete or rooftops that we add, we've got to take dirt out of that lake to maintain that water surface elevation. So that is, that's going to be part of our study. How much dirt do we need to take out to maintain the water surface elevation? If that makes sense.
And also, we plan on building apartments on the entire usable acreage. So we obviously don't want our apartments to flood. We're not going to do anything that's going to harm our investment as well. So.
Are you going to rent a pump it out if it needs it?
If it needs it, we'll rent a pump and we'll pump it out. So.
Okay, that's on record,
Okay.
yes?
Yeah, that's in the minutes. We would offer to you guys, there are regulatory requirements, and then there's just good old-fashioned teamwork. And so these guys are super smart. They've been taking care of Amarillo for a while at the expense of our drainage payers. And so if we can cooperate with you, maybe improve some outcomes over there, some people build 1 inch above, some people 18 inches. It can be beneficial for us to try to work together. So if there's a way for us to collaborate over there in engineering, we want to.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, but we don't want you to hear us saying we don't want you to annex. We do, and we want the housing. But we're just hoping that you guys see us as a partner and not an antagonist, and we'd love to help you get a good development in there that drains appropriately.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, it rains every now and again, but
Yeah.
a lot. That's the one thing. Any further questions for these gentlemen?
Well, I don't have a question, but just a statement, because what happens is, and this is just how it happens, we're all in the room and we all get together, you guys want to get something done, and then we do it, and 20 years from now it floods, and then so whoever owns it then says, well, I'm not cleaning it out, it's the city's responsibility. Then we come over here, then everybody's saying, why in the world did the city let somebody build an apartment complex by a Playa Lake? What were they thinking? So as long as we can get all these kind of worked out and make sure that it's everybody's, we're clear on whose responsibility is. I think we're all entering it with the good intentions, but if something doesn't happen to firm this, where when somebody's looking at when we do get flooding in that area and it starts to flood, whose responsibility is it, and exactly how is that supposed to work?
Yeah, and just one thing I'll point out too, the municipal road that we have going around the flood zone is there on purpose. We want to keep think I may just clicked away from, oh, there it is. You know, we wanted to keep kind of that separation. So we're not even technically really doing any development within the flood zone, if that makes sense. So our road is surrounding the flood zone. That was intentional. And then all of our apartments will be further upstream. And we'll obviously do a drainage report and analysis with the city to make sure that there's no flooding concerns.
So you guys, and I understand some of that, like you said, for asphalt and concrete that you have to excavate to keep it at the same level. Are y'all planning on making this like a feature of all your complexes? Like, hey, we kind of have a nice lake.
Right.
So you plan on excavating this and making it a little bit nicer than what it is, other than just a natural playa? Is that the goal?
And we will most likely have to excavate a good portion of that dirt to maintain that water surface elevation. That's just the nature of it, but that is the intention.
You're making this more attractive than what it is to just apply a lake. Yeah. So that would require,
dirt work.
Any further questions, gentlemen? Hey, thank you all for being here. Very productive. Mr. Kendrick, you're back up. Anything you need to add?
I don't have anything to add unless there's additional questions.
Okay.
So let me ask you, so with the annexation today, does this project come back to council in the future, or is it up to staff to implement all these things?
So in the future, you will see items like the rezonings is what you'll see in the future. Other things like the subdivision plats and the drainage reports, those are handled administratively. With city staff and then plats, we'll probably go to Planning and Zoning Commission in some form. But regarding you guys, though, it'd be just the rezonings.
Look forward to seeing you. At this time, we'll open a public hearing. Anyone here to speak for or against this item? Mr. James Skank, tell us your name and address.
I live in the city in a non-playa zone, which I like. Are these just apartments? Even more scary because you're involved with more impervious area. And my concern is what's going to happen to the rest of that area? Because a lot of times when you block off something there, it goes someplace else. So you've got another problem like they had out at the villas or whatever it was, where all that water was running down into across St. Francis. So, I like, but apartment living is not for me anyway. But be careful around these playa lakes. We've laughed about them over the time. I remember when guys were skiing out there at 58th Street in Georgia. When I came to college, you had boats and ramps and skiing around. And we've had a couple of almost 100-year rainstorms, if I'm not mistaken, in the last 4 or 5 years. So there we go.
I remember. Yes, sir.
Just to elaborate on the flooding concern, a lot of this is going to be taken care of in the platting process throughout each parcel when we go to develop. We'll have to submit the plats, drainage reports. All that'll be handled along the way. And then as far as the apartments, just kind of an FYI, we plan on building Class A, 3-story. They'll be nice, market rate. So it'll be a nice property.
Well said. Thank you, sir.
Can I get your name, sir?
Austin Martin.
Austin Martin, thank you.
Anyone else here to speak for or against this item? Okay, seeing no one further, we will close the public hearing and ask for a motion.
I'll make a motion. We accept ordinance number 8151 as stated.
Second. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes on to item 10C, some good old-fashioned ballot language. Who do we have coming up here? Ms. Coggins, are you running this one? Yes, sir. Okay.
All right, Mayor and Council. We talked at your last meeting about the ballot language length and talked about condensing, and specifically for our resolution for the sanctuary city for the unborn proposed ordinance. We were asked to bring back some options. So we've brought those back for you today.
And so I'm going to, if you're good with it, I'm going to flip briefly through a few slides so you can see the different options, and then we can land on whichever ones you might want to talk about. You've got at your place as we go through these sample ballots, and I do want to mention we have Shannon Lackey and we have Christy Bench here. So Shannon Lackey is the election administrator for Randall. Christy Bench is the election administrator for Potter. And so they're here if we have any specific questions for them today. They've been working with us a lot on this. So you've got some sample ballots. The first one is your original language. And what I've done on the screen today to try to be a little more consistent for you is I used the biggest size font I could to make this one work, and we use that same size font on every slide.
Okay, but to be clear, this is no good. Is that correct? It was rejected.
There are a lot of concerns with it. Do you want to take this one, Shannon?
Okay, I just want to be clear because this has been just a long process.
I started to say good afternoon, Mayor and Council, but good evening now. It has not been rejected. I don't want you to think that in any way. It can be done in its original form. Once we started inputting this data, we saw how problematic it was. And we felt that you all needed to be aware that we could see problems with it appearing on the ballot as it was presented to us.
Okay, thank you.
And as an example, you have our standard 3-column ballot, which you're probably used to seeing when you go to vote in an election. This one, marked original, has to go down to 4-point font in order to fit everything.
Can you put that up there?
I don't have it to put up there.
Well, it's ridiculous.
If you want me to go over here, I can, or we can pass one around, but it would take glasses or a magnifying glass for most any person to read it.
You're 29.
So what we've done is we've brought you 3 options. We talked about option number 3. Keep this in mind. We talked about option number 3 at our last meeting, but we've brought you 2 other options as well. So this first option, and I'm going to lean to Brian to interrupt me or interject anything on this. The first option is similar to what Lubbock used, with a little more language added to be sure that we capture this. So it's a shorter one, option 1 on your handout. It fits nicely on the page, and it fits what you'll see here. This is the screen. So the counties have taken what a voter would see on the electronic screen, and we've given you that too. So it would fit on one page. Option 2 is the medium length option. I'll give you a moment to read through that one. It also fits on a single page on the electronic screen. And then option 3, this one fits on your page that you have here. It would scroll on the electronic screen. So you'll see a page that looks like this. Your voter would scroll the machine to have to read all of
So they have to touch
option
it.
3.
Like read more, click here kind of a thing.
Yeah.
We were given one today. Here. I'd like to see if that one fits the ballot.
And if we'd have to take this back and test it, we'd probably also have to have legal counsel look at it to ensure that it meets the definition of including everything.
It sounded pretty good.
What we're running into is time.
Yep.
I have to have military and overseas ballots out by the 21st. That gives me 10 days to do all of the testing that we are required by law to do and to print all of these ballots. I currently have 1,500 city ballots to be printed. And I have about 200 military ballots, and that is federal law that I must get them out. So in order for us to take this back, test it again, bring it back to council, there is simply not time.
Well, I've read through these. My vote is for option 2. It's a little more lengthy, obviously, than option 1. But I think the font is good. It's not too much that I don't think that they'll read it. I think that if we have the full ordinance at the polling place and we have all of that there, that they can read it if they choose to read the 18 and a half pages.
And we'll put them online.
Put it online. So we'll have as many resources as possible to put it online. I think it's on the city already.
Yeah,
correct?
and it would be on the city webpage and both of the county's election pages.
Yeah, but we've spent hours and hours and hours speaking to attorneys, having attorneys work on this. We thought we came up with a good one, and it wasn't. So, I mean, I'm just throwing that out there. I'm for option 2.
I'm for option 3.
Sheesh.
But make your cases, gentlemen.
Well, my case is that I think option 2 is succinct. I think it hits all the issues that I think that need to be out there for sure. Obviously, it's not nearly as comprehensive as what we had initially put out there. Option 1, I think, is just too short. It just doesn't. I don't think it addresses all the issues. So that's my point.
I always think board's better.
We know.
Because people need to know everything that's there. And when you start chopping it up, I have a problem. I mean, we worked hard to get that first one done, and it was just too long. 3 gets us there closer to what it was originally. 2's cutting out a little bit, so that's just my opinion. Now, I would really like to use number 4, but we're told we ain't got no time, so I'm good with there, so.
Other council.
I think the more information you put in there, a lot of time that's going to be the first time people read it. I'm comfortable with option 3 as well.
Councilman?
Yeah, 3 is good.
Okay, good enough. I'll just make it all good and say we'll just take 3.
All right.
I'm not going to argue.
Well, we finally got Dawn on board. So, all right. Thank you, ma'am.
So what we would need is a motion from a council member to adopt this resolution with option number 3.
Nope, not doing it.
Do I have a motion, gentlemen, on item 10C?
I'll make a motion, we accept option number 3 for the wording on Prop A.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this issue? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 10C is in the rearview mirror once again.
Please don't.
Thank you, ladies, for being here. Appreciate you. On to item 10D. Mrs. Storrs, you got a budget that needs approving.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. So I have a presentation, and as you all can recall from earlier today, we've made a couple of tweaks to this since that point in time, so I'm going to try to go over that a little bit with you guys as well. Also of note, when you go to make a motion related to this item, there is motion language at your spot because state law does outline how the motion has to be made. So would appreciate y'all wording it that way. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is I just want to say a big thank you to our finance team, our budget team, and all of the departments. There have been hours and hours and hours of work put into this budget, and our budget team has worked pretty much around the clock to meet certain deadlines. So a huge thank you to Justin Blackstock and Katrina Owens. Nick Bonner and Brian Cortez have just gone above and beyond. So we would not be here without that team, so just want to say a huge thank you on that. Also want to thank Council for the many days of budget review we got through. I think we're at a good spot at this point in time. So wanted to go over some of the highlights that are included in this year's budget. So we do have funding included for a new fire battalion chief that's going to serve actually as the fire marshal. We have funding for 3 new firefighters and 1 new intelligent liaison position. We do have budgeted in here for the largest salary increases in decades for our police and fire department. We have over $22 million budgeted in street projects. We do have some solid waste funding changes to allow for a dedicated bulk waste program in the alleys and to convert the remaining hand-picked services over to poly carts. We have also increased annual funding for the parks capital projects, and there's $19 million in water and sewer projects included and $13 million in drainage projects included. As we discussed earlier this afternoon, there is $1 million in dedicated funding for a women's clinic at Public Health. This still would leave approximately, this number is going to change just slightly, but approximately $6.4 million in a working budget. About half of that would be ongoing funding, half of that would be one-time funding, and that could be allocated at a future point in time. And then this also includes a 50% TMRS COLA. A 50% COLA for TMRS for retirees. So again, that's not a 50% increase, that's 50% of what a COLA would be. So on the expenditure side, and this number has moved just slightly since our changes this afternoon, our current year approved budget is $531 million. We actually subtract about $31.5 million or so from this to equal our proposed budget for this next fiscal year at $499.3 million. It's actually going to come in about $499.6 million after we make the changes from earlier today. So I wanted to quickly state why are we going down, but we're adding things in. The reason we're going down is, if you'll remember, this year we had, I think it was about $28 million in street CIP, partially debt funded. We had a larger amount in water and sewer CIP, capital projects. So our annual amount went down by about $13.2 million, and then drainage capital. If you'll remember, this was one of the largest years we did a large debt issuance for drainage capital. So all that is your capital expenditures are going down slightly in this next year's budget because we're still working on all those projects that were approved in the current year. But again, we have all of these great things that were added into the budget. I reviewed those on the last page, and it does continue us at our current service levels. So from the revenue standpoint, the same is true. We actually are reducing our revenue budget. Our current year revenue budget is at $495.5 million. We've reduced that down about $27.5 million to our proposed budget of $468.1 million. So we did have increases. Now, the reason the revenue went down is because we proposed bond proceeds coming in to fund a lot of those capital projects in the current year. The biggest piece was the drainage capital projects. So our revenues have actually gone down, but we're still seeing some growth in our revenue. Our sales tax budget has gone up $2.1 million, so we've seen that sales tax number maintain at a good, healthy level. The property taxes would produce about $3.3 million more for operations based on the rate we've been discussing. And we'll go over that in the next agenda item. Environmental health has had some restructuring of their retail food permit fees to align better with full cost recovery. Solid waste, we are looking at about $1.28 per month increase on the residential side and about a 16.7% increase on the commercial side. And we talked earlier, that ranges a little bit based on those services on the commercial side. And that's to fund the bulk waste program in the alleys and the polycart service for the remainder of the hand-picked up services in the city. Then on the water and sewer rates, we have proposed to implement a new tier for commercial usage that is over 10,000 gallons. And so we had gotten direction to bring that number down to only equal what we needed for a debt issuance for a water line extension. And so that would increase, it would change the rate to be $4.15 per 1,000 gallon over the 10,000 gallon amount. So we had talked about $4.95 previously. We were able to bring that down to about $4.15 per 1,000 gallons. And then on drainage, there was no change to the user fees, but as a reminder, drainage will start paying a payment in lieu of franchise fee and a payment in lieu of property tax over to general fund.
So with that, what comes next? So we have our first reading on the proposed budget, and we will ask you all to record your vote. And as I mentioned, please follow that language that's there at the dais for you. That happens today. And then next week, on Tuesday at 3 p.m., we will hold a public hearing on the proposed budget, and we will do the second and final reading to adopt the proposed budget. And we have posted notices in the newspaper and on the city's website informing citizens that we'll be doing a public hearing and asking them to come and voice their opinions if they would like to be heard on September 17th. And as always, all of our information on the proposed budget is posted out on the city's website. If you go to our main page under the city, if you go to the public notice section, the budget's right there at the top of that section there. So it's hopefully very easy for everyone to find. So with that, I know that's a lot of work recapped in a very short presentation, but if there's any questions I can answer from council, I'd be happy to.
Questions, guys? No question. So, Mrs. Storrs, we've gone over it in depth and at length, so we appreciate y'all. Good job. I feel like it is something we should be proud of on the way this budget turned out. So, we're... Team. Yeah, I think we're excited about where you're taking us this next year. Would ask for a motion on item 10D.
I move that we adopt the proposed budget, which reflects an increase in revenue derived from property tax revenues over the last year's budget.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on 10D? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item 10D passes. On to item 10E, Mrs. Storrs.
All right, and if y'all don't mind, I'm just going to stay up here because I've got, I think, 7 presentations in a row. So I've got another quick presentation here on our property tax information. And so this will be the first reading of the ordinance related to the 2024 property taxes. As a reminder, everything is dictated by state law. We have a voter approval tax rate that essentially allows for 3.5% more revenue above the prior year on your maintenance and operation. If you go above that, you have to call an election, and which we're not planning to do, obviously, this year. And we have to provide notice to our property owners and hold one public hearing. So we will hold that public hearing next week, and I'll ask we can announce that again at the end of this item to make sure that people know that the public hearing will be on the 17th. So on our property tax rate, so our current property tax rate is 39.195 cents. Our 2024 voter approval tax rate actually has to be pulled back a little bit. This is the maximum tax rate you all could adopt without going to an election, and that rate is 38.723 cents. So what does that mean? It's actually a $1 per month decrease on a $100,000 home, but in reality, no one's home stayed the same, most likely didn't stay the same value from last year to this year. So the average home price did increase, and so even though our tax rate went down because those values went up, an average home would see about a $5 per month increase if we move forward with this property tax rate. So we do have built into your proposed budget that voter approval tax rate of the 38.723 cents. And again, that provides for our current service levels, some new positions, raises for our large raises for our public safety team, lots of street projects, and then that TMRS COLA for our retirees, plus a lot more. So that's what this property tax goes to support. We have all of our information related to our property taxes out on the city's website at amarillo.gov. So what comes next? We will ask you all to go ahead and do a vote on this first reading of the ordinance for the property tax rate. There's also specific language required by state law. It's there at your dais for your guidance, if you'll please use that. And if for some reason you want to go with a different rate, you can swap it out and I can help you with that motion. Then we will come back on September 17th, so a week from today at 3 p.m. We will hold a public hearing on the tax rate. We will do the second reading to adopt the tax rate, record that vote, and then we will have you all vote to ratify the tax rate. So we'll actually do 3
I'm sorry, we'll do 2 votes and 3 items on tax rate at the next meeting, and this is all according to state law. So with that, are there questions that I can answer related to your property tax rate?
Any questions? I don't think so.
Okay.
So on item 10E, I would ask for a motion.
I move that the property tax rate be increased by the adoption of a tax rate of 0.38723, which is effectively a 5.63% increase in the tax rate.
Second.
Have a motion and a second from the right side. Councilman Place 1, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Place 2, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Place 3, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Place 4, how do you vote?
Aye.
And the mayor votes aye as well. Motion passes. On to item 10F.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to let Cashin have the podium for a second, and then I'll be right back. I apologize. Yep. Go ahead, Cashin.
Thank you.
Afternoon, Cashin.
Hello, hello. We're pretty simple this year. We stayed pretty flat. As you know, the hotel occupancy tax collections have been flat since 2021, so our budget reflects that. I believe we've got about, $2,000 difference in what we really are budgeting our operations around. We did shift a few things in the budget that you'll see reflected on the summary page, but then also through the different departments. You'll see that we did put a little bit more towards film. We've got a good example of that in the last 2 weeks with Yellowstone and 1883 being on site. We actually saw a 20% revenue increase for our overall hotels during those 2 weeks, per week, 20%. So we're really putting a little bit more behind those sales efforts and location management efforts. But yeah, overall, everything is staying pretty flat. Our Route 66 budget, of course, is one that, if you looked at it, does have revenues outside of the hot tax. And then there was some adjustments to the interest income. Do y'all have any questions on anything? Or want me to go into more detail, I guess?
Any questions for Cashin, guys? We appreciate what you're doing over there. You guys are doing a good job. I think it's pretty evidenced by like the Route 66 and some of the other stuff you guys are pulling off. So you only have 9, is that right?
It's 9. We have 1 spot open right now. We're normally 10.
Every
yes.
time we see you working, we swear there's 40 or 50 employees over there. So
we feel like it. We have fun though. So.
We won't make you jump into anything further. So does anybody have anything else for Mrs. Smith?
We appreciate you, Cash.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Would ask for a motion on item 10F, please, gentlemen.
I'll make a motion that we accept Resolution 9-10-24-2.
Second.
I have a motion and a second from the other right side on item 10F. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. We're going to move on to item 10G. Does anyone have anything they would like to discuss further on that? Are we good with maybe tabling that item for a couple weeks, giving staff a little time to research?
I would make a motion, we table it for 2 weeks.
Have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. We'll bring that one back. Item 10H, Mrs. Storrs.
All right, so a few more budgets to go through here. The first one is for the Center City Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone Number 1, also known as Tiers Number 1. And so on this, I got a brief presentation. So total revenue, this has already been approved by their board on August 8th and recommended for approval by City Council. So total revenue in the budget is $2,244,983. The majority of that is from the taxing entity participation, just under or just a little over 2.1 million. So you have the City of Amarillo piece of 679,733, Potter County's piece of 1,073,000, Amarillo College piece of 382,000, and Panhandle Groundwater District of 15,000. On their expenditures, total expenditures are $1,374,120. Of that, $310,000 is for community projects, $220,000 is for Center City projects, and then there's a little over $557,000 projected for tax abatements that have been approved. And then they do have debt service payments of a little over $245,000. So the base values for tiers number 1 came through in 2006, and the base values were $139.5 million. Those have grown to the 2024 certified values of $316.1 million. This year, it has a smaller amount of improvements, just $0.1 million, but you can see the tremendous amount of growth in the appraised values in that area over that time period. So with that, are there any questions that I can answer?
No, but I would like to point out, if you can go back to that last slide.
Yes.
I mean, and I don't know how this may relate to other parts of town, but you see what's going on in downtown investment redevelopment, which has been going on since 2006. And you look at the increase in those property values, which they're more than double. I mean, so you look in 2006, again, and I would dare say that if you looked at across the board, I mean, across the city, of our property tax, of our property values more than doubled, I don't think so.
I don't think so.
But I mean, and part of this is and then we're taking the increment off of that. So I just wanted to point out that, whereas downtown used to not pay for itself in infrastructure and changes and that type of thing because the property values were depressed, because we didn't have any businesses down here. We had no hotels down here. Downtown used to be taking money from other parts of the community, other taxpayers' money, because the property values were depressed, and now it's able to generate this kind of increment. So I just wanted to make note of that.
I will say, as we meet with the other boards for tiers number 2 and tiers number 3, we like to point out the tremendous success that tiers number 1 has had, and just how in the early years it takes a little time to get going, but you can see the huge outcomes that have already come to be by tiers number 1 in the downtown area.
Well, and the thing, you look at that amount of increment that is generated, over the course of time. I would imagine by the time it expires, I guess it got renewed.
It did.
But you look, I mean, that's another $679,000 for us, for the city.
Absolutely.
I would imagine at some point, if it goes away, that's just an extra $1 million or more in tax money that shows up in our coffers. So.
Yes, sir. Yeah, with all that additional investment down here.
Right.
Okay, anything further on this one? We are on item 10H. Would ask for a motion.
I move to adopt resolution number 091024-4.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. With no further discussion, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Mrs. Storrs, on to item 10I.
All right, so this is a resolution approving the 2024-2025 budget for East Gateway Tiers number 2. So again, have a couple of quick highlights related to this budget. This budget was approved by the Tiers number 2 board on July 18th and recommended to come up to council for approval. So this budget includes total revenue of $666,709, of which almost $617,000 of it comes from the taxing entity participation. So City of Amarillo is just under $195,000. Potter County is a little over $308,000. Amarillo College is a little over $109,000, and Panhandle Groundwater District is about $4,300. Total expenditures are $542,675, with $100,000 for community projects, $224,000 for projected tax abatements, and $150,000 for debt service. As mentioned, this was approved by the board, and this is a newer tiers zone, and the base values are from 2016, and then $40 million, plus we did an expansion of those boundaries in 2020 that added an additional $1.4 million. So though the 2024 certified values in this zone is $110.5 million, and this year alone they added in $24.4 million in new improvements. So this zone is also starting to really gain some momentum in the development in that area. Are there questions that I can answer for council?
No questions, gentlemen? Okay, thank you, Mrs. Storrs. It's on us.
I move to adopt Resolution 09-10-24-5 as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 10J.
All right, item 10J is a resolution considering the 24-25 budget for the South Gateway Tax Increment Reinvestment Number 3, our newest tiers. This was approved by their board on August 22nd to come up for council for approval. As mentioned, this is a much newer tiers. They've only been in place for a couple of years now. Total revenue is anticipated at $32,784. Of that, City of Amarillo piece would be a little over $12,000. Randall County's piece would be just under $14,000, and Amarillo College's piece would be a little over $6,800. Total expenditures are budgeted at $37,300. $32,000 of that is a reimbursement to the developer for infrastructure, an agreement that they have in place, and then there's about $4,000 in audit fees. So there's not a whole lot yet going on from this budget for tiers number 3. So the 2022 year was the base values, and those values were at $28.8 million, and the 2024 certified values are $32.4 million, and of that there is $0.6 million of new improvements in that area. So with that, are there any questions that I can answer on this one?
I don't think so. Gentlemen, a move on 10J, please.
I move to adopt resolution number 9-10-24-6.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 10K, Mrs. Storrs.
All right, 2 more budgets. So this item is a resolution to approve the Amarillo Potter Events Venue District budget for the 2024-2025 year. So I've got some budget highlights there, and on it you'll see that the total revenue was budgeted at $4,310,537. There's 2 main components of their revenue. They get their revenue from their vehicle rental, from a vehicle rental tax, and that's budgeted to come in at just under $1,250,000, or just almost $1,250,000. The biggest piece they get, it comes from a 2% hotel occupancy tax that was approved by the voters back in the late 90s. And so we're anticipating that revenue to come in at about $2.6 million. So expenditures are budgeted at $4,783,487. So the biggest components of that come from the tri-state lease improvements out there at the fairground area related to the Amarillo National Center building and the supporting buildings of $879,950. We have Venue District has a management contract that includes also the property insurance for the Amarillo National Center and the supporting buildings of that comes to a total of $700,000. There is event development that is supported out there at the Amarillo National Center of $440,750. On the other side, there is a Civic Center management contract that's in place, and that's $398,004 for next year. And then they are looking to fund all of the Civic Center improvements next year that are in the city's budget of $1,545,000. They also have outstanding debt service. There's 2 debt issuances that are outstanding. The total debt service for this next year is at $785,000. This was approved by the Venue District Board on August 19th. Oh, and I have a date wrong, sorry, and that's 2024. And then I took this to Potter County Commissioners yesterday, and it was approved by Potter County Commissioners yesterday on September 9th. So with that, are there any questions that I can answer?
What's the debt service payments over there again for?
So back in the 90s, the citizens voted to approve 2 different projects. So there were 2 different debt issuances, and it was to construct the Amarillo National Center that's out at the Tri-State Fairgrounds area, so that big building there, where all the rodeos and everything are conducted. And then the other project was to construct the north part of the Civic Center. So at that point in time, that's how the Venue District was formed. It went to a vote. Citizens said, yes, we want to support these projects, we want to issue debt, and we want to implement a 2% hotel occupancy tax to pay for that. So the Venue District stays in existence as long as there is outstanding debt associated with the venues. And so the 2 debt services, I believe the later one expires in 2051. So those debt issuances are still out there for quite a bit, but again, these funding sources are used to support that. And so if once the projects are fully paid for, and certainly would have to explore more about it, but in theory what happens is as the debt's paid off, then the district dissolves and the funding sources dissolve.
So if
as
the
well.
debt goes away, then it dissolves, huh?
Yeah.
So what are they paying debt on though? The National Center?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. Yeah, and on the Civic Center to construct
Exhibit Hall and
that's correct.
Heritage Room?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. So they pay debt service on those 2 pieces, but then they also pay for improvements to both of those areas, and then they pay the city to operate the north part of the Civic Center, and they pay Tri-State Fair to operate the events and stuff out at the Amarillo National Center.
And don't they give us money, like, I think they paid for our new football turf last year?
That is correct. Yes, so on this, if you'll look down there where it says Civic Center improvements of $1,545,000, they're putting $1.5 million worth of improvements in over at the Civic Center. And some of those improvements were, I know there were some boiler replacements, there was some more LED lighting that needed to be done, and then I can't remember what the other project was, but all of that's being paid for out of these funding streams and is not having to come from City of Amarillo, hotel occupancy tax, property tax, or sales tax.
Real good.
Yeah. Good questions. Anything else I can answer on this?
I'll make a motion that we accept resolution 09-10-24-7.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? 10K passes. Last item, 10L. Mrs. Storrs.
All right, so item 10L is the consideration of a resolution to approve the 2024-2025 fiscal year budget and associated program of services for the Amarillo Hospital District. So again, another 1 page of highlights from the budget. This was approved by the Amarillo Hospital District Board on August 27, 2024, to come up to City Council for approval. So in their budget, oh, and I apologize, on Venue District, we had a couple of our board members. We have our president, Terry Wright, and then we have Mark Zimmer that were both here in support of Venue District. I was just cruising straight along, and I apologize. So.
Laura was the one that put you at the end of the agenda, so it's her fault. So I apologize for that.
Thank you, guys.
Thank y'all.
Okay, on the hospital district budget, so they have revenue budgeted of $3,032,600. Of that, $2.6 million is anticipated to come from interest income. They receive a certain amount of tobacco settlement proceeds of about $405,000, and then they do have ongoing rental income for a property that is owned and is rented out to the Familia Dental Clinic, and they receive about $27,600 per year on that. On expenditures, the total expense budget for next year is $12,159,651. Of that, the biggest piece is related to the indigent care contract. As a reminder, the Amarillo Hospital District is tasked by state law to provide indigent care services to all indigents within the city of Amarillo and in Potter County. And so they have a contract in place with Universal Healthcare Systems through Northwest Texas Hospital to provide indigent care services through 2036 at this flat amount of $7.7 million per year until 2036. So that amount was negotiated years ago, and the contract's been extended a few times, but the final extension has been exercised, and it does go through 2036. But again, that amount stays flat through the end. The retirement plan contribution, I put 0 on here, and you're probably wondering why would you put that on there. So I just wanted to state real quick, there was a old legacy retirement plan that was in place back when the hospital district owned Northwest Texas Hospital. So up until the hospital sold in 1996, Amarillo Hospital District provided a retirement plan. So once they sold the hospital to Universal Healthcare Systems, that plan became frozen. So no new people were coming on, but there were still people participating in it, becoming vested in it, and paying contributions out. Because of the change in the market conditions over this past year, which seems a little interesting because interest rates went up so high, they had a very unique opportunity to look at terminating that retirement plan. So what they did is they negotiated a contract with, or they actually went out to bid with insurance companies to buy annuities to replace that retirement plan. And so all of those members were able to get an insurance annuity that equaled exactly what they were owed from the retirement plan. It was a very unique opportunity, and they were able to do it with a final contribution into that retirement plan of $2.6 million. There's not many times that any entity can say that their retirement plans are fully funded. Theirs got fully funded, and they were able to terminate the plan and push the liability off onto an insurance company. And so there will no longer be any contributions going into that plan. So I just wanted to state that because it was a huge, huge accomplishment by the hospital district this year. Also in their budget for next year, there's 2 pieces that are paid to Texas Tech Health Sciences University. There's $100,000 that goes for psychiatry services, and then the other 1.6 goes for pediatric subspecialty services. So your hospital district is helping support some of those initiatives through Texas Tech. Then the $405,000 that we anticipate receiving from tobacco settlement proceeds, they pass those straight along to Tobacco Free Amarillo to help with the tobacco cessation initiatives here in the community. And then here's the other piece that I know we've talked about a lot during budget. Hospital district is providing $2 million to public health each year through 2036. That's what the plan is at this point, to help fund those important public health initiatives. As a reminder, your Amarillo Hospital District has not assessed a property tax rate since 1996 when the hospital was sold. The plan will be, and we have been doing cash flow projections through 2036 when the indigent care contract expires with Universal Healthcare Systems. The corpus dollars from the sale of the hospital should be sufficient to pay all their expenditures through 2036. So what that means is that City of Amarillo and Potter County residents were provided property tax relief for a 40-year period. And so hospital district was able to pay all of their commitments through the sale of that hospital. But then what that does mean is in 2036, they will need to look at starting to assess a property tax again. So that is something that we have been talking with the board about. We will have to get some state law changes to do that. You all are very aware that if you increase your maintenance and operating tax rate more than 3.5%, it automatically goes to a vote. Their maintenance and operating rate is at 0. So anything they increase it to would automatically cause it to go to a vote. So we will have to work with state law to get a carve out to allow them, since they went 40, the plan is to go 40 years without assessing a tax rate, to be able to start implementing one again. And again, I know that this is not necessarily tied in with the city's tax rate, but this is a board that you all approve their budget. You approve the members of that board, and they've done really, really good work, but they've got some big tasks coming up over, I'd say, the next decade or so. So with that, that's the main part of the hospital district. They also have approved a local provider participation fund. This is a piece of state law that allows hospitals to pay into the hospital district, and the hospital district then makes intergovernmental transfers into Medicaid eligible programs that basically gives the hospitals back more than what they put in to the hospital district. So they get a bigger return on their dollars. So they have approved the highest assessment for the year at 6%. We're assuming those assessments will come in around $70 million. They'll probably come in slightly less than that, and they will pay all of that and anything that they have on hand at this point out to the tune of about $79 million this next year. That has no effect on the hospital district. They're just the entity that kind of works that mechanism and helps bring a really good partnership to all of our local hospitals, and all of our local hospitals participate in that. So with all of that, are there any questions that I can answer related to your Amarillo Hospital District?
How did the idea about the retirement plan change come up?
So we work with actuaries every single year because they have to book on their financials how much their liability is associated with their pension plan. City does the same thing. So each year we're working with actuaries to help give us that financial data. And because it was a frozen plan, the actuaries have been talking to the district and to city staff for the last few years stating, hey, there could be an opportunity at some point that they could shift these over to insurance annuities. And where I'll say that's a win on the city side is your city staff administered that plan. And so that frees up time for your city staff as well. Because the way the plan was written, when interest rates went up, it actually got closer to matching what what the plan promised to all of those participants. And so it was a great opportunity to get bids from insurance companies because those annuities were at a point that would highly match what the funds were available in that retirement plan. So it was because of our actuaries with Arthur J. Gallagher, a phenomenal team there, and they've brought that to the district the last few years. It was too big. They were going to have to put too much money into the plan to terminate it the last few years, and then as interest rates changed, it got to a point where it was a pretty even amount based on what they had budgeted this year. Yeah, very good question. Anything else I can answer?
Any other questions, gentlemen?
Yes, sir.
We would ask for one more motion here.
Move to adopt resolution number 9-10-24-8.
Second. Motion and a second on item 10L. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we're going to go back to item 10C real quick, the item that never goes away. Mr. McWilliams, what is the issue on this one?
If we'll just make the motion in the form of the resolution number with the option, that would be good. I think the motion was just 10C. Make the motion with actually calling out the resolution number.
We made a motion without the resolution number.
Correct.
Okay. So who made that motion? Did we show? Tom?
I think it was Tom, yeah.
Okay. Tom, could you re-motion that one? Or do you want to amend it?
You just re-motion it would be fine.
I can make a make a motion that we accept resolution 10.10, 9, 10, 24.
No, start over.
I make a motion. We accept 09-10-24-1.
Option 3, correct?
That's correct. We did not put option 3.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion to accept 09-10-24-1, referencing option 3, and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. You're adjourned.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Appreciate it. I swear.